Chapter 2263, Settling down. A mere radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core was getting in the way of a candidate before everyone. Many people secretly admired his courage, causing them to hold Jian Chen in a new light. However, there were also others that looked at Jian Chen in delight when they thought about what he would suffer in the future. His days would be numbered after offending a chosen saint candidate. Chang Yang, you're very impressive. I will remember everything you've said. Gongjing Xian's face was terrifyingly sunken. He stressed each word as killing intent filled his eyes. Senior Yanxue, this Gongjing Xian has been collaborating with Wen Qing to use the battle that day to slander me. He wanted to get the 1,000-leaf lotus that the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak gave me. There's probably no one apart from the Peak Lord who can produce powerful evidence to prove this matter and redeem my innocence. However, seeing the Peak Lord is basically impossible with my status, so I can only ask Senior Yanxue to visit the Peak Lord for me, and then announce the outcome of the visit and let everyone know whether I actually used Gongjing Xian's help to defeat Wen Cheng and obtain this reward, Jian Chen said to Donglin Yanxue. He did not try to tone it down at all, allowing his voice to spread afar. Donglin Yanxue giggled. She glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, I will naturally help you for the sake of the 1,000-leaf lotus and prove that you're innocent. Alright, very impressive. Gongjing Xian's face darkened in anger. He glared at Jian Chen with gritted teeth before turning around and leaving. He knew that as long as Donglin Yanxue stood with Jian Chen, he would be unable to do anything to Jian Chen. Moreover, Jian Chen did not seem to revere him like the other disciples, so remaining any longer was pointless. With Gongjing Xian's departure, Wen Cheng and the black-robed man naturally did not linger. They said nothing and fled from the soaring cloud's peak in a hurry. At the same time, on a distant mountain, Xian Bin, also one of the candidates, stood with his arms behind his back. He observed what happened from afar. I never thought Chang Yang would actually give the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yanxue. Since it has ended up in her hands, it's basically impossible for me to get it. But that should be for the better. Donglin Yanxue is the weakest. Even with the 1,000-leaf lotus, it won't bring a huge advantage towards her candidacy for chosen saint. As long as Gongjing Xian and Shida don't get it, it won't be able to influence much. Xian Bin murmured to himself. He was rather satisfied with this outcome. Then he left the mountain peak with radiant saint force. The matter raised by the 1,000-leaf lotus came to an end. All the more powerful radiant saint masters of the various peaks extended their invitation towards Donglin Yanxue again. The soaring cloud's peak became extremely busy during this time. However, Donglin Yanxue declined all of the warm invitations without any hesitation. Half an hour later, all the radiant saint masters gathered on the soaring cloud's peak returned to their own mountains. The busy soaring cloud's peak finally recovered its usual peace. Senior Chang Yang, how do you know Senior Yanxue? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? As soon as the soaring cloud's peak settled down, Bai Yu arrived beside Jian Chen and grabbed his hand affectionately and asked. On the other hand, Zhuo Feng stood in the distance silently with a sunken face. He glanced at Donglin Yanxue and Jian Chen as the flames of envy smoldered within the depths of his eyes. God damn it! How does Chang Yang know Senior Yanxue? How is it possible for them to know each other? Zhuo Feng thought as he gritted teeth. He liked Bai Yu, while Donglin Yanxue was someone like a goddess to him. She was an existence he could only look up to and never stand on equal grounds with. Yet this exact same goddess was actually acquainted with Jian Chen and even stood forward to speak for Jian Chen even if it meant offending Gongjing Xian. It was not a great feeling for Zhuo Feng. Junior sister, I'll explain to you later. I have something to discuss with Senior Yanxue, so you should go back first, Jian Chen said to Bai Yu. Bai Yu immediately wrinkled her nose in displeasure and snorted gently, Senior brother, don't you have to pass on your comprehension of the laws of the hallowed to me? And you need to teach me the radiant palm as well. Alright, alright, alright. I'll teach you another day. It's just that I really am busy right now, Jian Chen smiled. He had truly accepted Bai Yu inside, treating her as his younger sister. He showered her with care. Senior Chang Yang, remember that's what you said. I'll come to find you tomorrow. You have to help me with all you have. Bai Yu glanced at Donglin Yanxue before leaving alone. As for Zhuofeng, he naturally needed no reminder from Jian Chen. After Bai Yu had left, he glanced at Donglin Yanxue, who remained there, with mixed feelings. He walked off into the distance with disorderly thoughts. However, he did not go too far away. He stopped at a certain distance away from Jian Chen's dwelling, hiding there secretly to observe the dwelling. Or more correctly, he was observing Jian Chen and Donglin Yanshue's relationship. Chang Yang, it looks like your senior really does care about you, Donglin Yanxue said mysteriously. Clearly, she had noticed that Zhuofeng was spying on them. Jian Chen shook his head as he gave a bitter smile. He did not try to explain Zhuofeng's behavior. Tell me. You've come all the way from the Myriad Flowers Peak. What do you need from me? Donglin Yanxue glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, I heard you have quite the achievement in the usage and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. I've come to find you for this. You wish me to teach you the method of using Radiant Saint Force? Jian Chen looked at Donglin Yanxue in some surprise. Donglin Yanxue shook her head gently and corrected him, it's not teach but to discuss and share. Jian Chen nodded understandingly. He smiled, not everyone can grasp my method. It'll probably be very difficult to benefit from me. How is it impossible for me to do something that even you with your one-colored soul core can achieve? Donglin Yanxue replied with a question. All right then. Let's do it. However, before all this, I still need you to go to the sky-gazing peak and get some evidence regarding the thousand-leaf lotus. I think the Peak Lord will see you with your status as a candidate. Donglin Yanxue was mildly surprised by that. She looked at Jian Chen seriously and asked, You're serious? Of course I'm serious. Gongjing Xian has come for me time and time again. If I don't counterattack, he'll think I'm just an easy target. This time, I will definitely humiliate Gongjing Xian with the evidence. Jian Chen's face sank, and a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Donglin Yanshue's face hardened. She carefully studied Jian Chen's ordinary face that he had created from the mask as if she had just met him. A while later, Donglin Yanxue nodded solemnly. She said sternly, All right. I'll go to the sky-gazing peak right now. However, I hope you can consider the consequences clearly. The people behind Gongjing Xian are not as simple as those behind Wencheng. With that, Donglin Yanxue directly made her way towards the sky-gazing peak. Chapter 2264, Mutual Exchanges. Very soon, Donglin Yanxue returned. She came back with a crystal that recorded her conversation with the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak. Take it. I've gotten what you want. Donglin Yanxue passed the crystal to Jian Chen and continued, It looks like even the Peak Lord takes displeasure in some of Gongjing Xian's actions. When I asked the Peak Lord about the thousand-leaf lotus, he clearly knew I was recording it, but he did not stop me. As a result, getting the evidence was extremely easy. Jian Chen accepted the crystal and immediately sent the senses of his soul inside. Donglin Yanxue and the Peak Lord promptly appeared before him along with their voices. Jian Chen heard their conversation clearly. Disciple Chang Yang of the Soaring Clouds Peak only had a one-colored soul core, but I became utterly amazed and lost in wonder by his usage of Radiant Saint Force. After he defeated Wencheng, who had a far greater cultivation, I bestowed my thousand-leaf lotus to Chang Yang on a whim. Peak Lord, was the thousand-leaf lotus not a reward prepared for the victor? Of course not. I only bestowed it to Chang Yang on a whim. The few lines from the Peak Lord completely separated the matter of the thousand-leaf lotus from Gongjing Xian. Jian Chen's senses of his soul receded from the crystal. He clutched it tightly as he gradually revealed a sneer. He wanted to see how Gongjing Xian would respond once the contents of the crystal were made public. Gongjing Xian, I definitely won't be giving you a way out of this time, thought Jian Chen. I've helped you already, so shouldn't you consider my matters now? Donglin Yanxue said. Jian Chen nodded. With a flip of his hand, the crystal vanished. He casually glanced at where Zhuo Feng hid before making a gesture to invite Donglin Yanxue into his dwelling. Then he made his way into his dwelling. Donglin Yanxue immediately became stunned when she saw Jian Chen enter his dwelling. A gleam of light flickered in her eyes as she hesitated. But in the end, she made up her mind and entered Jian Chen's dwelling. Senior Yanxue has actually entered Chang Yang's dwelling. How is this possible? Zhuo Feng became completely dumbfounded when he clearly witnessed this from afar. He was about to explode with envy. What's so good about Chang Yang? It was Junior Baiyu first, and now Senior Yanxue. Senior Yanxue is like a resplendent pearl of the Radiant Saint Hall in particular. Damn it, Zhuo Feng's face was twisted. He could accept Baiyu, but Donglin Yanxue of all people as well. She was someone he treated like a goddess, sacred and inviolable. In the end, his goddess was actually completely unfazed and entered Jian Chen's dwelling, which drove him mad. Zhuo Feng even wished to become Jian Chen at that moment. Jian Chen and Donglin Yanxue sat before each other in Jian Chen's simple dwelling. A cluster of radiant saint force shone with gently white light as it leapt about like a little wisp on the tip of his finger. Radiant saint force is just like a limb of mine, my body, or even a part of my soul. As long as it exists in the surroundings, I'm able to create a wondrous connection with it and control it, making it change to my will. Pay close attention, Jian Chen was both concentrated and serious. The radiant saint force seemed to be alive in his hands, constantly changing between various forms. It moved as he wished. With a thought, it turned into a radiant sword, but in the next moment, it turned into a radiant shield. Everything happened smoothly. His control over radiant saint force seemed limitless. Donglin Yanxue paid close attention as she concentrated on Jian Chen's actions. She would close her eyes to comprehend it at times, or control radiant saint force to experiment around with it at other times. In the end, Donglin Yanxue had to admit that although she was much more powerful than Jian Chen in terms of cultivation, she was nowhere close to his grasp and almost perfect usage of radiant saint force. Donglin Yanxue did not even gain a rudimentary grasp over it after so many attempts. However, Donglin Yanxue did not become dejected. She was not afraid of failure. She constantly tried and confirmed or disproved her thoughts. In the end, she used her talent to slowly discover this new method of use. Although it was nowhere close to Jian Chen's, her usage over radiant saint force did reach a whole new level. Enchanted, Donglin Yanxue completely submerged herself in the entire process. She forgot about time and would ask Jian Chen to confirm her thoughts and discuss their experiences frequently to make up for her mistakes. Gradually, the new method of control that she had discovered approached perfection. As for Jian Chen, he managed to benefit from Donglin Yanxue as well. Through their conversations, he managed to come in contact with a higher level of the laws of the hallowed. Moreover, he gained a rough understanding of the four-colored soul core from Donglin Yanxue. It could be said that both of them managed to benefit from this exchange. Unknowingly, half a month had already passed since Donglin Yanxue entered Jian Chen's dwelling. During this period of time, the rumors regarding Chang Yang and Donglin Yanxue had caused quite the buzz in the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone knew about it. At first it was the truth as to why Chang Yang could defeat Wen Cheng as well as his non-existent agreement with Gongjing Xian. It had spread to most of the mountains through word of mouth, causing all the disciples to feel contempt for Jian Chen. But very soon, this news was replaced by how Donglin Yanxue had spent a long time in Chang Yang's dwelling. All the Radiant Saint Masters within the Radiant Saint Hall guessed at their relationship. Rumors sprang up everywhere during this time. At the same time, all of the powerful radiant saint masters who adored Donglin Yanxue were angered. Many of them gathered on the soaring cloud's peak, forcing the lord of the peak, Han Xian, to personally come out and seal up the mountain, forbidding anyone from setting foot there. However, there were many disciples and descendants of elders among them. Han Xian felt greatly pressured when they worked together against him. Only when Donglin Qiushui, the lord of the myriad flowers peak, one of the 99 main peaks, arrived did these radiant saint masters of great status settle down. Half a month later, Donglin Yanxue finally emerged from Jian Chen's dwelling, but as soon as she made her way out, she became dumbfounded. The protective formation of the soaring cloud's peak had already been activated. Many radiant saint masters gathered in the air, blocked out by the formation. On the soaring cloud's peak, near Jian Chen's dwelling, Han Xian and Donglin Qiushui stood beside each other as they stared at Donglin Yanxue. "Auntie, why have you come?" Donglin Yanxue saw Donglin Qiushui, and her expression immediately became rather unnatural when she thought about how long Donglin Qiushui had been waiting, along with the fact that she had spent half a month in Chang Yang's dwelling. "Look at you. You don't even pay any attention to the mess you can create. If I didn't come, would you have been able to cultivate for half a month in peace?" Donglin Yanxue shot a glance at Donglin Yanxue with a fake sense of irritation and rebuked her. "But I need to say that you really haven't come here for nothing. Although that kid called Chang Yang's cultivation is nothing special, his understanding of radiant saint force is peculiar. You've managed to benefit quite a lot by exchanging experiences with him," continued Donglin Qiushui. "Auntie, you know. If I didn't know what you were doing inside, why would I ever let you stay in a man's dwelling for so long? I would have dragged you out long ago." "Let's go," Donglin Yanxue said in frustration. She did not let Donglin Yanxue respond, directly pulling her away. Chapter 2265, A Brewing Storm. Now that the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak had personally come to take Donglin Yanxue away, none of the powerful radiant saint masters gathered outside the soaring cloud's peak dared to stand in their way. Quite a few of them even looked at Donglin Qiushui with dread. However, the radiant saint masters felt no fear toward the soaring cloud's peak. After Donglin Qiushui and Donglin Yanxue had left, many of the radiant saint masters immediately shifted their gazes towards Jian Chen. Their eyes were filled with coldness and hostility. "Chang Yang, it's best if you maintain a certain distance from Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanshue's identity is not simple. She's a direct descendant of the Donglin clan. The difference between your statuses is just too great, and there are many people who are pursuing her. Anyone who's bold enough to do that will definitely possess an astonishing background. If you get too close to her, it'll be detrimental to you." Han Xian made his way over to Jian Chen's side and said sincerely. "I understand. Thank you for your reminder, sir." Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Han Xian. After watching Han Xian leave, he returned to his dwelling. Due to the soaring cloud's peak being sealed off, none of the radiant saint masters gathered outside the mountain managed to set foot there. However, Han Xian's actions naturally offended many people. He displeased many powerful radiant saint masters. What haughtiness! The lord of the soaring cloud's peak actually dares to shut the door on us. This Han Xian seems to be from the Han family of the eastern region. He's only a nameless member of the Han family. There might not be a lot of people in the Han family who even know about his existence. The radiant saint masters all dispersed as they discussed. Before long, the soaring cloud's peak had regained its peace. Afterwards, Jian Chen entered a long period of seclusion. Apart from going to the mountain top to listen to Han Xian's lessons of passing on the laws of the hallowed, he spent the rest of his time in his dwelling cultivating. He had benefited quite a lot from his interaction with Donglin Yanxue. It allowed him to gain a new understanding of radiant saint force. He needed time to tidy through it all. Bai Yu remained the same as before, basically coming to Jian Chen's dwelling every single day to hear about Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of the hallowed. Jian Chen, on the other hand, slowed down. He would only spend an hour a day explaining his comprehension of the laws of the hallowed, but even with that being the case, Bai Yu would spend several hours comprehending after each session. As a result, in just half a month, Bai Yu finally broke through in her dwelling on a night with the full moon. She successfully comprehended the laws of the hallowed with her two-colored soul core, becoming a hallowed saint master. Not only did Bai Yu's breakthrough alarm Han Xian, but it also alarmed the sacred hall. On the next day, an elder arrived on the soaring cloud's peak, taking Bai Yu into the sacred hall to cultivate. At the same time, the matter spread across the entire Radiant Saint Hall, making all the disciples remember Bai Yu's name. Although there were people who became hallowed saint masters with just a two-colored soul core in the Radiant Saint Hall, they were almost mythical existences. Every single one of them would receive much support from the Radiant Saint Hall, where they would become the elites among the elites. As a matter of fact, without any exaggeration, once someone became a hallowed saint master with a two-colored soul core, their status in the Radiant Saint Hall would almost be able to rival the 5 candidates. After Bai Yu entered the sacred hall, Zhuo Feng became completely downhearted. He had liked Bai Yu since a long time ago, and he was confident about making her fall in love with him. Not only was he a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core, but he was also a 5-star genius. He experienced a natural sense of supremacy over Bai Yu, who was only a 1-star genius. However, all of this changed when Bai Yu comprehended the laws of the hallowed and was personally taken into the sacred hall by an elder. Right when Bai Yu's matter settled down, Jian Chen finally took action as well. He made many copies of the conversation between Donglin Yanxue and the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak before silently spreading them around. Basically all the Radiant Saint Masters believed that Jian Chen had only managed to beat Wen Cheng because of Gongjing Xian's secret arrangements. That way, he could become the final victor and make a name for himself. In exchange, he would give the 1,000-leaf lotus he won to Gongjing Xian. However, after Jian Chen was victorious, he broke off his end of the secret deal he had established with Gongjing Xian, giving the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yanxue instead. As a result, not only did he closen his relationship with her, but he even gained her protection, where Gongjing Xian could do nothing to him. Because of this, Jian Chen had a very poor reputation in the Radiant Saint Hall. Basically everyone would talk about Chang Yang in disdain and scorn. It destroyed Jian Chen's reputation. Now that the contents of the crystal were made public, the truth that was the exact opposite of what everyone believed naturally spread without any attempts to suppress it. It immediately led to quite an uproar, where even a few more powerful Radiant Saint Masters began to pay attention to this matter. If it was only a matter between 2 weaker Radiant Saint Masters, it would not have caused such a disturbance. More importantly, it directly pulled an esteemed candidate into the matter as well. Just when Gongjing Xian was about to enter seclusion for the final spurt, he received the news as well. His face immediately became extremely ugly as heavy killing intent filled his eyes. Pay close attention to Chang Yang. Once he leaves the Radiant Saint Hall, immediately contact the people in the clan to get rid of him, Gongjing Xian said frigidly. Yes, young master. I will contact the clan immediately, a violet-robed guard said politely from behind Gongjing Xian. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During that time, Jian Chen did not take a single step away from the Soaring Clouds Peak. He remained holed up there, basically spending all his time on cultivation. As Bai Yu could not interrupt him anymore, Jian Chen finally gained some peace. On this day, Jian Chen suddenly roused from his cultivation. He looked at the sky before making his way out of his dwelling. He stared at the distant horizon. A gate had suddenly appeared in the protective formation around the Radiant Saint Hall in the distance, and afterwards, a figure directly entered the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. The figure gave off an astonishing presence, enough to make the mountains tremble as all the vegetation was squashed down as if they were bowing in submission. The person strolled through the air and crossed a huge distance in a single instance. In just a single step, he arrived within the radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds. Jian Chen became stern when he saw this person. He felt an ill omen. It seemed like this person's arrival was related to him. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall with supreme authority and the 8 vice leaders were all gathered within a grand discussion room on the highest floor of the sacred hall. They were all stern. A gray-robed, middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back in the center of the room. He looked at the leader of the Radiant Saint Master who sat on a throne with great composure. "I've only come to pass on a thought that we've all agreed on over there. We hope your Radiant Saint Hall can open its gates and allow us to search as we wish, unlike before, locking the door in our face," the gray-robed man said. "That will be impossible." The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall shone with holy light as he declined without any hesitation at all. The man smiled indifferently. "Leader, I think you also know that our actions are only to find Jian Chen. We will never do anything that gets in the way of the interests of your Radiant Saint Palace. You must cooperate. In reality, it's not just your Radiant Saint Hall. We've even sent people to all the other peak organizations on the desolate plain so that they can open their gates and allow us to find Jian Chen. Jian Chen possesses the Inata Tower, which belongs to the heavenly palace of Bishan. Our actions are actually only a service to the heavenly palace of Bishan, to share the burden with Her Majesty Xian. If you don't cooperate, wouldn't that be making things difficult for Her Majesty Xian?" The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall could not help but become stern when Xian was mentioned. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishan was in existence only second to Grand Primes, one of the handful of supreme experts of the Saints' world. Her name had a huge influence on the peak organizations across the Saints' world. Our Radiant Saint Hall represents Radiant Saint Masters. As a fighter, Jian Chen could be hiding anywhere on the desolate plain but not our Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, it's impossible for him to be here, the leader said sternly. Jian Chen is far more complicated than you've imagined him to be. So many of us, peak experts, have tried to detect his traces and whereabouts through various secret techniques, but we've found nothing in the end. He has such impressive means of staying hidden that even if he did hide in your territory, you would not be able to find him. Now, we've basically flipped through the entire desolate plain. Apart from the peak clans on the desolate plain, we haven't missed a single corner. We all have people stationed in outer space and the teleportation formations across planes on the desolate plain as well. As a result, it's impossible for Jian Chen to escape. We can already determine that Jian Chen is hiding in a peak organization. The gray-robed man stared at the leader with shining eyes as he waited for the leader's reply. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall said with a heavy heart, "Since it's serving the heavenly palace of Bishan, our Radiant Saint Hall will obviously be more than willing." Chapter 2266, Quite the disturbance. "If that's the case, thank you for your cooperation. Farewell." The gray-robed man clasped his fist and left. These people have gone too far. Do they really think they're sovereigns of the world, where they can act as they wish on the desolate plain? The desolate plain is our territory, yet we're supposed to let these outsiders run around fearless and basically upheave the entire plain. It's humiliating as a native organization of the desolate plain, and even worse, they actually want us to open our doors and let them search as they wish. What kind of place do they think the Radiant Saint Hall is? Although our Radiant Saint Hall has declined, we're still a peak organization that had a grand exalt in the past. How can we listen to the orders of those outsiders? Those outsiders will stop at nothing. The 8 vice leaders all snarled with righteous indignation after the gray-robed man had left. All of their expressions were horrible and utterly sunken. Sai, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, exhaled gently. His voice was filled with powerlessness. He said steadily, "These outsiders have come under the name of the heavenly palace of Bishan. Let alone our Radiant Saint Hall, but there's probably no one from the other major organizations on the desolate plain who are bold enough to turn them down. Even without considering offending the heavenly palace of Bishan when you reject them, they'll start believing you're purposefully protecting Jian Chen. Some of them with ulterior motives will even label you as wanting to take the Inata Tower all for yourself. Once that happens, the consequences will be far worse. Deactivate the protective formation and let the outsiders search our Radiant Saint Hall. However, we can't let them act as they wish. As a result, including me, no one is to enter seclusion. At the same time, have all the elders pay close attention to the outsiders. Once they cross the line in our Radiant Saint Hall, immediately punish them according to our rules. We can let them in and look for Jian Chen, but we cannot let them act recklessly. Yes, leader, replied the 8 vice leaders. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall continued, the 3 great treasures of the Inata Grand Exalt are the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, the Inata Tower, and the Fortune Jade Pedestal. Since the Inata Tower is with Jian Chen, once an organization finds Jian Chen, they'll obtain the Inata Tower, and then they'll offer it up to the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. This will be a great merit. At the same time, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall as well. The leader continued, in all these years, it has been far, far too long since we've had any late God King disciples due to that mysterious expert. As a result, the lords of various peaks who could break through were all forced to suppress their cultivation to mid-God King. Even the disciples who were unable to suppress their cultivation were forced to leave the Radiant Saint Hall in the end, hiding away all by themselves. Moreover, not a single one of them have returned so far. Who knows whether they're still alive or not? If this lasts over a prolonged period of time, our Radiant Saint Hall will definitely wane in strength. As a result, we must search for the Inata Tower with all of our efforts as well. If we can find it first, we won't have any need to fear that mysterious expert anymore. The eyes of the 8 vice leaders all lit up from that. They said, that's right. Once we obtain the Inata Tower, we'll be able to ask the First Majesty to take action personally and kill that mysterious expert. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng is one of the most terrifying figures in the world. Back then, the Flame Reverend Grand Prime, who was also known as one of the most powerful below Grand Exalt, had fled across the entire Saints' world while being hunted down by the First Majesty. In the end, he was forced to hide. That mysterious expert who has been specifically targeting our Radiant God Kings may be very powerful, but can he be more powerful than the Flame Reverend Grand Prime? This might be an opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall. Leader, it's best if I personally head out and see if I can find Jian Chen's traces. I want to search for Jian Chen as well. After all, he has a direct correlation with our Radiant Saint Hall's fate. 2 vice leaders immediately asked for permission to search for Jian Chen. Even though all of them knew it would not be easy to find Jian Chen since he could avoid so many peak experts of the Saints' world, they still could not help but want to try their luck. On that day, all the protective formations around the Radiant Saint Hall vanished, exposing every inch of the place to the public. Without the formations, the powerful senses of the outsiders' souls immediately came sweeping in. They enveloped the entire Radiant Saint Hall with great pressure, without missing a single corner at all. They scoured all the mountains of the Radiant Saint Hall. Even the secret rooms deep underground were not missed. On that day, basically no disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall ventured out. Under the restraints of their peak lords, they all stayed on their respective mountains. They could feel the powerful senses moving across them, immediately causing many of the Radiant Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on to tremble in fear and unease. Jian Chen sat on a rock outside his dwelling. He also clearly sensed the powerful senses sweep past him, causing his heart to grow heavy. Now that the Radiant Saint Hall had opened its gates to outsiders, Jian Chen truly felt endangered. Fortunately, I have Senior Mo Tianyin's mask. As long as I have it, I don't have to worry about being exposed by the senses of those experts. Even if they were standing before me, they probably would not be able to tell what my true appearance was. But there is nothing perfect in the world, so if they filter through the people one by one, they'll discover problems with me sooner or later. I will be exposed one day. My main intentions of coming to the Radiant Saint Hall is to enter the Tower of Radiance and obtain the cultivation methods left behind by past experts. As a result, I cannot leave here before I enter the Tower of Radiance, or it would have all been for nothing, thought Jian Chen. He knew that he only had one chance to enter the Tower of Radiance. Once his identity was exposed, it would become impossible to hide his martial soul force as well. He would immediately become an enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, making it impossible for him to enter the Radiant Saint Hall. Deactivate the formation. All disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak will be inspected. At this moment, someone called out coldly from beyond the Soaring Clouds Peak. 2 violet-robed guards and a few outsiders arrived near the Soaring Clouds Peak, hovering in the sky silently. Jian Chen looked at the people from his rock. Even though he maintained a facade and only appeared slightly confused, his heart grew heavier. Shuofeng, Changyang, come to me. At this moment, Han Xian's voice rang out from the top of the mountain. Afterwards, the formation around the Soaring Clouds Peak gradually vanished as well. Jian Chen immediately stood up from the rock and flew towards the top of the mountain. Very soon, he arrived on the mountain top. He discovered that Han Xian was conversing with the 2 violet-robed guards, while Shuofeng was already standing behind Han Xian. Under the orders of the leader of our sacred hall, all disciples, including the Peak Lords, must be inspected, a guard said to Han Xian. Han Xian nodded, I've already received the message from the elders. We will definitely cooperate. The violet-robed guard nodded before taking out a mirror and directing it at Han Xian. Immediately, a resplendent stream of light shot out and enveloped Han Xian completely. The mirror was extraordinary. It could pierce through illusions and reveal the truth. Through it, all disguises would be rendered useless. Jian Chen could clearly sense that the powerful senses of the soul gathered in the air of the Radiant Saint Hall were all gathered on the mirror when the light enveloped Han Xian. Alright, there are no problems. Next. Very soon, the light from the mirror vanished, and the violet-robed guard directed it towards Shuofeng. The same process happened. In the end, it was Jian Chen's turn. Jian Chen knew that there were many experts observing everything that happened here, so he remained indifferent and undertook the inspection of the mirror calmly. He showed no flaws in his facade at all. The mask from Mo Tianyun was even enough to trick so many peak experts, so he refused to believe a mere mirror would be able to expose his true identity. There are no problems. Let's go to the next mountain. Very soon, the light subsided, and the violet-robed guard stowed the mirror away. He left with the group of people. Clearly, the mirror was useless against Mo Tianyun's mask. There was not just a single group like this. Whether it was the interior mountains or the exterior mountains, there were over a dozen of these groups that ventured from mountain to mountain with similar mirrors and a few outsiders. Everyone, ranging from peak lords to newly accepted disciples, was inspected with the mirror. Sigh. This god king called Jian Chen has caused quite the disturbance. The entire desolate plain has lost its peace because of him. Han Xian stood on the top of the mountain and sighed emotionally when he watched the group leave. Chapter 2267, Leaving the Radiant Saint Hall. After hearing Han Xian's words, Shuofeng nodded in agreement. He could not help but show admiration. This senior Jian Chen really is impressive. It's rumored that he's only a god king, and he has already offended the famed solitary sword ancestor and heavenly king of azure brilliance. The 2 experts had hunted him down, yet he still survived until now. Senior Jian Chen is also able to remain hidden against so many foreign peak experts who have to the desolate plain. Probably only Senior Jian Chen can achieve something so astonishing among all the god kings in the saints' world. After more than a year of build-up, the matters regarding Jian Chen had ceased to be any kind of secret. It had already become widespread and known by all. Naturally, Shuofeng had learnt of this from elsewhere as well. Jian Chen felt extremely strange when he heard Shuofeng's praise and how Shuofeng referred to him as senior. He immediately glanced at Shuofeng in an extremely strange manner. Zhuo Feng seemed to sense Jian Chen's gaze, so his face immediately darkened, and he glanced back at Jian Chen coldly. He snorted icily before leaving. Who knows how he would feel once he discovered that the Chang Yang beside him was the senior Jian Chen he was talking about. After leaving the mountain top, Jian Chen returned to his dwelling. He was in no mood to continue cultivating now. He sat on the cold, hard ground as he sank into his thoughts. Not only did the Radiant Saint Hall opens its gates now, but it had even sent its disciples to cooperate with the outsiders, turning over every pebble of the mountains to look for him. This was not good news for Jian Chen. Moreover, he knew that the inspection today was only a start. As time went on, the searching would become stricter and stricter. It might even end up becoming flawless. Even though he had Mo Tianyan's mask, which could hide him from most treasures and secret techniques, the mask was not all-powerful. Once he revealed a tiny hole in his story, exposure would await him. It looks like it's no longer suitable for me to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall. It might be safer out there, Jian Chen thought. There were around 2 years left before the competition between the candidates. He had to last those 2 years no matter what. Once he entered the Tower of Radiance and got what he needed, it would not matter even if his identity was exposed. The next morning, a group of violet-robed guards flew down from the sacred hall that stood above the clouds before scattering towards the various mountains. They all bore a crystal containing information that they passed to the peak lords, who then passed it down to their disciples. Jian Chen received a crystal from Han Xian. Jian Chen silently viewed the thumb-sized crystal in his hand and checked the contents. As expected, everything in the crystal was information about himself. It was extremely detailed, describing his special traits, weapons used, laws comprehended, and various battle skills and secret techniques grasped. Without any exaggeration, everything that Jian Chen had exposed in the Neptunian Divine Palace was recorded within the crystal. Nothing was missing. There was even some description regarding his profound sword qi. It was just unclear. The crystal was signed off as an announcement from the Radiant Saint Hall. It also urged on all the Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall to take part in the search for Jian Chen. Clearly, the Radiant Saint Hall also wanted to join in on the search for Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly as he clutched the crystal. He had just been thinking about the reasons he could use to leave the Radiant Saint Hall. The crystal had come at a perfect time. Afterwards, Jian Chen arrived on the top of the soaring cloud's peak with the crystal and found Han Xian. Zhuo Feng, it's already extremely impressive that you're able to control Radiant Saint Force to such a degree. Don't always compare yourself to your junior brother Chang Yang. Your junior brother's cultivation is indeed weaker than yours, but he is quite talented in the control and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. Not everyone can do that. Currently, Han Xian sat on a large rock as he explained the usages of Radiant Saint Force to Zhuo Feng. When Jian Chen arrived, Han Xian stopped and looked at Jian Chen. Immediately, he smiled amiably and asked, Chang Yang, are you looking for anything? Zhuo Feng also discovered Jian Chen's arrival, and his eyes immediately turned cold. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Han Xian and said, Sir, I want to leave the mountains for some time and see whether I can find Jian Chen. Humph, you overestimate yourself. Why don't you take a good look at yourself first before you think about looking for Senior Jian Chen? Senior Jian Chen is a god king. Even if you really do come across him out of chance, it'll be impossible for you to survive. Zhuo Feng rebuked coldly before Han Xian could say anything. Zhuo Feng. Han Xian's face sank slightly, and he immediately called out to get Zhuo Feng to shut up obediently. Then he looked at Jian Chen gently and shook his head, Chang Yang, allow me to persuade you otherwise and cultivate on the soaring cloud's peak so that you can become a hallowed saint master when you have a two-colored soul core like your junior sister. Just don't get involved with the search for Jian Chen. Even all the peak experts can't find any trace of his Jian Chen, so how is it possible for you to find him easily? If you get involved, it'll just be a waste of time. Sir, looking for Jian Chen is only one of the reasons. The other reason is that I want to go out and have a look. I can also use it as an opportunity to train myself, said Jian Chen. After a moment of thought, Han Xian ended up nodding in agreement. All right. Since you're determined, I won't stop you. Chang Yang, you have to remember to wear the attire of a disciple from the Radiant Saint Hall at all times outside. The desolate plain is not peaceful. With your current cultivation, it'll be extremely dangerous, so the uniform will be the best thing to keep you safe. After all, our Radiant Saint Hall is one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. Apart from the martial soul lineage, our Radiant Saint Hall isn't on bad terms with anyone, so it is rare for anyone to be bold enough to attack disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall. This is the medallion for a disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Take the medallion to the Foreign Affairs Hall and register yourself. Afterwards, you can leave the Radiant Saint Hall. And take this jade talisman with you. If you come across any danger or problems, crush it immediately, and I'll hurry over as quickly as I can. Han Xian warned Jian Chen repeatedly before letting him leave. Afterwards, Jian Chen went to the Foreign Affairs Hall and registered his leave with the medallion. Then he underwent various identity tests before leaving the Radiant Saint Hall all by himself. Chapter 2268, The Last Fragment. The Saints' world had a total of 49 great plains and 81 great planets. The 49 plains were actually 49 tremendous land masses that hovered in space, where each one was larger than any of the 81 great planets. Among the 49 plains, there were 7 sacred plains. Every single one of them possessed a grand exalt. Although grand exalts were still grand primes, they had reached the limits of grand prime. They had comprehended at least a single law to completion, allowing them to become existences akin to the laws, where they could interfere with the operation of the laws and grasp the world with a single thought. As a result, if a grand exalt spent a long time cultivating on a plane, the laws there would be influenced by the grand prime, leading it to become much simpler and clearer. It would become several times easier for people to comprehend the laws of the world. This was how the 7 sacred plains of the saints' world gained their name. The Prosper Plain was one of the 7 sacred plains. It was where the Anata Grand Prime of the 7 Grand Exalts spent most of her time cultivating. Meanwhile, the Anata Grand Prime's residency, the Heavenly Palace of Bishan, was located at the very center. That was also the holiest place on the entire Prosper Plain. It was a place revered by all. Even though there were many peak organizations and supreme experts on the Prosper Plain, the last organization they would want to provoke or offend would naturally be the Heavenly Palace of Bishan. Although the 7 Grand Exalts had either died or suffered injuries from the battle in the past, where even the Anata Grand Prime was rumored to have died many years ago, as long as the Heavenly Palace of Bishan possessed Xian, it would be able to remain standing in the saints' world and would continue to strike awe in everyone's hearts. It was also because of Xian that the various experts on the Prosper Plain dared not act up. The majestic Heavenly Palace of Bishan sat at the center of the Prosper Plain. It gave off a supreme presence at all times, like an ancient beast crouching there quietly. A group of golden-armored divine guards stood there silently like statues. They never moved, protecting the Heavenly Palace of Bishan with loyalty. An old woman, fatigued from travel, stood near the entrance of the Heavenly Palace of Bishan. She stood there politely with her head lowered. She had already stood there for a very long time, such that a thin layer of dust had formed on her clothes. Su Ran, the 8th Majesty wants me to tell you that you can't see the 1st Majesty. If you keep waiting here, it'll just be a waste of your time and effort. A divine general in golden armor walked out and said to the old woman with mixed feelings. I really have something extremely important to report to the 1st Majesty. If the 1st Majesty is unwilling to see someone as insignificant as me, then can I see the 8th Majesty? Su Ran asked bitterly. The divine general sighed gently when he saw how persistent Su Ran was. He said, then let me pass on the message. Whether the 8th Majesty wishes to see you or not will be up to luck. With that, the divine general made his way back into the Heavenly Palace of Bishan. However, just when he had turned around, he was suddenly taken aback. A woman in a red dress who seemed to be in her 20s slowly made her way over. The woman was extremely beautiful, enough to outshine the moon. She strode over without giving off any presence at all. She seemed just like a mortal. However, the divine general immediately showed respect when he saw the woman. He clasped his fist and bowed in a hurry, "Greetings to the 8th Majesty." Junior Su Ran greets the 8th Majesty. Su Ran also bowed towards the woman in red with mixed feelings. The woman in red was the 8th Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishan, Bai Rong. "You can go," Bai Rong said to the divine general. She spoke with a very soft, warm, and pleasant voice. "Yes, 8th Majesty," the divine general bowed politely and quickly vanished within the Heavenly Palace of Bishan. Bai Rong made her way towards Su Ran with gentle steps. She looked at Su Ran's face that had grown unfamiliar with age. She could still vaguely remember the beautiful, overcautious, and slightly naive little girl she had first seen several million years ago. It made Bai Rong sigh deeply. Bai Rong stared at Su Ran for a while before saying gently, "Su Ran, I already know why you've come. We've learnt about Master's Tower very long ago. This isn't something you should be concerned about, so just forget about it. Grand Master's Zenata Tower is with a junior called Jian Chen. Jian Chen's strength is weak. If he continues to hold on to the Inata Tower, it can be taken away at any other time, so please take back the Inata Tower as soon as possible, 8th Majesty," Su Ran pleaded. Bai Rong sighed gently, "Master has orders for us not to interfere with this matter. As a result, let alone me, even if you find first senior sister, it'll be pointless." "What? Does that mean that the Grandmaster, he's still, Su Ran immediately became stunned when he heard Bai Rong mention her master. She was in emotional turmoil. "Do you understand now? This matter isn't something that we disciples can interfere with." Bai Rong looked at Su Ran deeply. She said no more, turning around and leaving. She vanished back into the Heavenly Palace of Bishan. "Grandmaster is still alive, Grandmaster is actually still alive," Bai Rong's words echoed through Su Ran's head constantly. She was so shocked that she struggled to calm herself. At the same time, a hazy figure shrouded by a dense layer of light from laws sat in outer space. The laws of the world were clearly presented about him, interweaving together into the truth of the world. The laws themselves seemed to be booming out. It was as if the person had become the laws themselves and represented the laws of the world, the supreme will of the universe. Disciple Xin greets Master. At this moment, a beautiful woman in white clothes appeared silently before the figure shrouded in light. She clasped her fist in respect. The woman was the First Majesty, Xin. She was the person who had forcefully barged through the formations of the Neptunian Divine Palace and destroyed the clone of the Samsaric Immortal Exalt. She was also the person who had struck awe in all the experts of the Saints' world, allowing the Heavenly Palace of Bishan to remain standing all this time. "Master, I've found Senior Ancient Path's 1 spiritual soul and 5 animal souls," said Xin. At the same time, several specks of light flew out from her hand. These specks of light varied in sizes. Some were like souls, some were like blurry consciousnesses, and others were imprints. These specks of light were directed into the hand of the figure surrounded by light. He looked at the soul fragments and said, "Only a single spiritual soul remains out of Ancient Path's 3 spiritual souls and 7 animal souls. Once they are all brought together, I'll be able to rebuild Ancient Path's soul." Chapter 2269, The Mysterious Rock. 1. Master, may I ask where Senior Ancient Path's last spiritual soul is? The First Majesty asked politely. The figure shrouded in light fell silent. However, the light around him surged, becoming extremely blinding like a sun. At that moment, he seemed to have become the world, wielding the laws of the world, turning into the greatest will of the universe. With a single glance, he was able to see the source of the world and peer into both the past and the future. There seemed to be no secrets across the vast universe in his eyes. The last spiritual soul possesses a sliver of power from ancient paths will. Under the protection of this power, even grand exalts will struggle to find him, the figure shrouded in light said a while later. His voice contained all the sounds of the universe, making it impossible to discern his gender. Master, even you are unable to find the last spiritual soul of senior ancient paths? Once I fully recover my cultivation, finding the last spiritual soul will be nothing difficult. The War Dragon Empire happened to be one of the 5 everlasting empires on the desolate plain. They possessed strength equal to the Radiant Saint Hall and was also a peak organization of the desolate plain. Jian Chen currently sat in an inconspicuous location within an inn that was not particularly impressive in the revered imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. He was in the white robes that represented his status as a Radiant Saint Master, and he ordered some small dishes. He drank and ate at leisure. The inn was not large, so it had been filled since long ago. Noisy and clamorous sounds rang out from every corner of the inn. A man's wealth is his own ruin by causing the greed of others. I've investigated this person called Jian Chen thoroughly. It's said that he's very powerful, where he made a name for himself in the Neptunian Divine Palace. He has extremely astonishing battle prowess, enough to make it into the rankings of the God King's throne. It's just a pity that the Inata Tower has doomed him. Now that the entire desolate plain has been sealed off, Jian Chen is doomed as long as he's still here. I just wonder how much longer he can hide for. It'll happen soon. As long as Jian Chen is still on the desolate plain, he'll be discovered before long. Those foreign organizations are searching the desolate plain with more and more care now, but I need to say that Jian Chen sure knows how to hide. He's able to hide even until now, away from the close search of so many peak experts. What do you think the Inata Tower is? How can a mere God King possess something like that? If Jian Chen doesn't hand over the Inata Tower, he'll definitely suffer an extremely miserable fate. He has made so many peak experts set out, so he's probably already caused them much displeasure. His fate won't be great even if he hands over the Inata Tower willingly, I think. Cultivators of various cultivation levels in the inn discussed the topic of Jian Chen loudly with great interest. In reality, similar discussions were not limited to this tiny inn. It was present everywhere across the desolate plain. Not only did all the cultivators on the desolate plain remember Jian Chen's name, but it had also become the topic of casual conversation for everyone. Jian Chen sat there quietly in his white robes. He eavesdropped on the various conversations, and he did not become perturbed at all. He remained calm the entire time. A while later, Jian Chen tossed some medium-quality divine crystals onto the table and left. He had already been to many places during the days he had come out. He had gained a rough understanding of the situation of the desolate plain. What pained him the most was the fact that basically all the teleportation formations across plains were closed down. Without a great enough status, it was impossible to take a teleportation formation off the desolate plain. Even outer space around the desolate plain had been sealed up by the various peak organizations, stopping the operation of all the spaceships. People were only allowed in but not out. Moreover, many small groups patrolled every inch of the desolate plain. These groups all possessed secret treasures that could see through disguises. They would test everyone that they passed by, and once someone seemed suspicious, they would be captured without any hesitation. From the very beginning, there were naturally many cultivators who wanted to conceal their identities. They began to resist as much as they could, or they even directly killed off the groups they came across. However, these people would basically be instantaneously suppressed the moment they started fighting. This was because peak experts would be paying attention to these patrolling groups at all times. It was also because of that these groups became more and more fearless, allowing them to run amok. Even Jian Chen had been stopped and questioned by several patrolling groups. However, as Jian Chen was a disciple of the Radiant Saint Master, the groups only inspected his identity and did not make too much trouble for him. Very clearly, these people were unwilling to go overboard with any of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. After leaving the inn, Jian Chen strolled through the busy streets. He clutched the crystal that contained the detailed information about himself and looked around as if he was looking for Jian Chen as he made his way out of the imperial capital. Very soon, Jian Chen arrived at the city gates. He shook his head in disappointment and murmured, "It's full of people here. It looks like finding Jian Chen really isn't easy. I better go to the next city to try my luck." As he said that, Jian Chen stowed the crystal away and left with radiant saint force. Two middle-aged men followed him and walked over steadily from behind Jian Chen. They looked at the direction which Jian Chen had vanished off into as they could not help but sneer. "This Chang Yang is so foolish that he is cute like a child. He only has a one-colored soul core, yet he still wants to find Jian Chen. He's dreaming, he is indeed far too naive. Anyway, he has finally left Dragon City. Let's follow him. Once he's far away enough, we'll do it immediately. I heard that this Chang Yang has extremely impressive talent. It's a pity that he recklessly offended young Master Xian. He won't have much time left." The two middle-aged men communicate secretly before slowly rising up into the sky. They hurried off in Jian Chen's direction at a steady pace. At this moment, Jian Chen had arrived several million kilometers from the imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. Just as he flew over a stinking swamp, the two middle-aged men silently appeared and approached Jian Chen from in front and behind. "Who are you?" Jian Chen immediately became alarmed. "You must be Chang Yang, right? You don't need to know who we are. All you need to know is that you're going to be dead very soon, Chang Yang. Who told you to offend young Master Xian? There is only death for you once you've offended young Master Xian," the two middle-aged men sneered. They looked at Jian Chen like they were looking at an ant. Chapter 2270, The Mysterious Rock, 2, So you were sent by Gongjing Xian. Tell me, what has Gongjing Xian offered you? I'll give you 10 times the amount. Jian Chen remained composed and said calmly, "You're working for Gongjing Xian for the various cultivation resources he's offering. I can give you whatever Gongjing Xian can give you, such as this divine hull." With a flip of his hand, a hand-sized divine hull appeared from his space ring. The two middle-aged men who had come to kill Jian Chen never took him seriously from the beginning. However, when they saw the divine hull in Jian Chen's hand, their eyes narrowed as they became overjoyed. 9th grade of the Truth Tier. It's actually at the 9th grade of the Truth Tier. You actually have a treasure like that on you. The two middle-aged men were extremely surprised. The divine hull was something they could not resist. Greed immediately filled their eyes as they lunged at Jian Chen as quickly as they could. They wanted to take the divine hull for themselves. Jian Chen's lips could not help but curl up into an undetectable sneer as he watched the two middle-aged men rush towards the divine hull. In the next moment, a pair of hands suddenly extended out from the divine hull, reaching towards the two of them with speed that seemed indescribable to the middle-aged men. The sudden occurrence made the expressions of both men change. However, it was already too late. The two hands grabbed their necks with lightning speed, and under their horrified gazes, it forcefully wrenched them into the divine hull. Gongjing Xian sure does have a high opinion of me. He actually sent 2 early god kings to deal with me, who's supposed to only be equivalent to a receival fighter, Jian Chen sneered as he looked at the divine hull in his hand. Afterwards, he said to the structure, "Hey yeah, I'll leave the 2 of them to you." Jian Chen's voice sounded in the divine hull clearly. "Yes, Master," Heya responded politely from within the divine hull. "Master, I feel like I'm going to break through soon," Heya said after a slight pause. "You're going to break through? This soon?" Jian Chen was surprised. Once Heya broke through, he would directly reach the primordial realm. A primordial realm expert had once been an indomitable existence in his eyes. Now, one of his retainers was about to become a primordial realm expert, which amazed Jian Chen. It's all because of Master's flower of ways. If it were not for the flower of ways and the various heavenly resources, I would have never touched on the boundary of the primordial realm so soon, He said in deep gratitude. After a moment of consideration, Jian Chen said, the divine hall can't endure the disturbance you make when you break through. The situation is special right now. It's not a good time to break through. He, suppress your breakthrough temporarily. Yes, Master. Afterwards, Jian Chen checked the surroundings. After he discovered that he had left no traces behind, he was about to leave. But at this moment, an extremely vague and mysterious presence appeared from the swamp below him. The presence was extremely weak and vague. If it were not for the fact that Jian Chen's soul had fused with a sliver of true chaotic force, making it extremely powerful and sensitive, he would not have been able to sense the mysterious presence at all. This was because it was just too vague, so vague that even the senses of primordial realm souls would not be able to discover it. Jian Chen suddenly looked at the swamp below him, and after a moment of hesitation, he dived in. A layer of milky white light formed a white, airtight barrier around him. The water and mud around him were pushed aside by radiant saint force along the way, allowing Jian Chen to dive in. As he dived deeper and deeper, Jian Chen became more and more astonished. The swamp was far deeper than he had imagined it to be. He felt that he had dived several dozen kilometers at the very least, but he still had not reached the bottom. The ordinary swamp seemed to lead straight into the ground. And the deeper he dived, the greater the pressure in the surroundings became. In the end, Jian Chen was unable to keep up the barrier with radiant saint force alone, so he just dispersed all the radiant saint force. He did not use any energy at all, using his body to endure the pressure from the depths. In the end, after who knows how long, Jian Chen dived several tens of thousand kilometers and finally hit solid ground. He arrived at the very depths of the swamp. There was a layer of extremely tough rock at the bottom of the swamp. Jian Chen sensed around with his soul and finally found the thing responsible for the mysterious presence. It was actually a rock 4 feet wide. Jian Chen expanded the senses of his soul in an attempt to investigate the contents of the rock. However, to his surprise, the senses of his soul told him the rock that was clearly right in front of him did not exist. It can only be discovered with the naked eye. This rock is not simple. Jian Chen rubbed the rock gently. Afterwards, he shot out a strand of sword qi from his fingertip, scraping off a thin layer of powder from the surface of the rock. Afterwards, he took out the divine hall from his space ring and spread the powder on it. He thought, this powder should be able to conceal the divine hall and prevent people from finding it with the senses of their souls. Very soon, the tiny divine hall was covered with a thick layer of powder. Afterwards, with a thought, Jian Chen vanished along with the rock. Only the divine hall covered in rock powder stood at the bottom of the swamp quietly. Jian Chen silently appeared within the divine hall with the rock. He cleaned off the dust around the rock and began to study it carefully. The rock was cubical, 4 feet in length, width, and depth. It was dark red and extremely tough. Even with Jian Chen's current strength, he was unable to shatter it. From the surface, it seemed ordinary. Apart from being tough and undetectable with the senses of the soul, it did not stand out in any way. It did not even give off any pulses of energy. However, Jian Chen was able to discover slivers of extremely obscure and mysterious presences radiating from the rock thanks to the extraordinary senses of his soul. He believed that no one else aside from himself could sense this presence. That even included the peak experts. Heya, do you recognize this? Jian Chen called Heya over to identify the rock. But very soon, Heya shook his head. He had never seen or heard of a wondrous rock like this. Jian Chen stared at the rock in thought for a while before making up his mind in the end. Sword qi flashed from the tip of his finger as he cut off a thin layer of rock with quite the effort. He studied it carefully in his hand. Chapter 2271, Fortune Jade the rock was extremely strange. It did not seem to stand out at all when observed with the naked eye, and the senses of the soul were completely useless against it. As a result, Jian Chen secretly used his soul that had fused with chaotic force to closely observe the tiny slice of rock in his hand. Very soon, he discovered in great surprise that a minuscule amount of the mysterious presence existed within the rock slice. At that moment, the remaining presence vanished at an extremely gradually rate. When the presence remaining reached a certain amount, Jian Chen discovered that he could vaguely sense the rock slice with his soul. The rock slice was no longer invisible to the senses of the soul. I see. The reason why the rock can avoid being detected by the soul is not because of how special the rock is itself. It's all because of the mysterious presence that has permeated the rock. As soon as I sliced away this piece of rock, the mysterious presence began to vanish gradually. It looks like the origins of this mysterious presence is hidden within the rock, Jian Chen thought to himself. The light in his eyes flickered as he immediately got to work, chipping away at the rock. However, it was just too tough. The closer he got to the center, the tougher it became. Towards the end, Jian Chen was only able to chip it away at an extremely slow rate even when using his full strength. Jian Chen frowned at the sight of this. Since he knew the rock was not as extraordinary as he had imagined it to be, it also meant that the powder he spread on the divine hall would not be able to keep the structure hidden for long. Once the powder became useless, the peak experts who had gathered on the desolate plain would be able to discover the divine hall he had hidden at the bottom of the swamp easily. There's not much time left. Jian Chen scraped off some new powder and spread it on the divine hall again. Afterwards, he drew the 9-star sword of heavenly ways without any hesitation and began to chip away at the rock with careful control over the sword. A day later, Jian Chen finally reached the very center of the rock after replacing the powder on the divine hall several times. Immediately, an extremely resplendent light burst out. It was blinding and dazzling, like the most beautiful color in the world. Anyone who saw the light would become entranced by it. Along with the resplendent light, a light presence that could focus the souls of people expanded as well. It resonated with the laws of the world, causing them to tremble as if it was invoking the endless mysteries of the universe. Jian Chen became completely stunned with the appearance of the somewhat familiar light. He stared at the shining jade within the rock in a daze as intense joy and disbelief filled his eyes. It's Fortune Jade. It's actually Fortune Jade. Jian Chen murmured blankly. At that moment, he was in emotional turmoil. Great surprise and delight had filled him completely. He knew exactly how precious Fortune Jade was. It was a unique treasure of the world. He had even learnt from the sword spirits that the Nirvanic immortal Exalt, known as the greatest expert of the vast immortals world, only possessed a piece of it, and it was not particularly big. It was only a third of the size of the Inata Grand Prime's Fortune Jade. Jian Chen could not help but begin breathing heavily. He forcefully suppressed his excitement as he continued to swing the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, carefully controlling its power to carve away the rock around the Fortune Jade. Very soon, a complete piece of the Fortune Jade was presented before Jian Chen. It was roughly the size of the projection he had previously seen on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower. The only difference was that the projection he saw was circular, shaped like a cushion, while the Fortune Jade before him was irregularly shaped and the size of a millstone. What a huge piece of Fortune Jade! It's probably the same size as the Inata Grand Prime's one. Jian Chen became overjoyed when he stared at the Fortune Jade before him. However, he seemed to think of something and immediately stowed the Fortune Jade into a space ring before leaving the Divine Hall and returning to the swamp. At that moment, he could no longer care about whether the presence of the Inata Tower would be exposed or not. He directly took out the tower in the bottom of the swamp and tossed the Fortune Jade in there. Jian Chen believed that something as precious as Fortune Jade could only be truly safe when stored in the Inata Tower. If he was elsewhere, he would have never been bold enough to take out the Inata Tower, as the risk of exposing himself would be far greater. It was much safer here as he could use the natural geography to his advantage. I hope that the presence of the Inata Tower won't be exposed, Jian Chen prayed inside. Even though he concealed the tower's presence to the best of his ability, he did not have complete confidence. After all, the peak experts all possessed exceptional abilities. Their capabilities had exceeded Jian Chen's realm of understanding. Suddenly, Jian Chen noticed something and looked to the side. The light in his eyes flickered as he pushed the power of his soul to the limit. He actually discovered an extremely well-hidden concealing formation there. This is a natural formation, similar to the formation around where the ancient skywolf passed away that I accidentally barged into. They can only conceal, but they're flawless. All cultivators within formations like these basically only barge in accidentally. Jian Chen distinguished the type of formation it was very soon with his special soul. At this moment, something happened. The mud that pressed against Jian Chen in the surroundings began to churn violently. The powerful senses of a soul swept over with earth-shaking power, surging down from above. It approached the bottom of the swamp. Jian Chen's face suddenly changed. He had Mo Tianyan's mask as a disguise and had no reason to worry about being exposed by the senses of the soul alone, but since it had come, it had definitely discovered something strange here. If he was discovered by the senses of the soul, there would be quite a lot of trouble. He might even face the risk of being completely exposed. Without any hesitation at all, Jian Chen took a step and directly entered the concealing formation. As soon as Jian Chen's figure vanished, the senses of the soul followed closely and reached the depths of the swamp. It moved about there as if it was searching for something. However, Jian Chen was prepared beforehand. He left none of his presence there at all, so apart from the powder that he did not manage to clean up, he left no other traces at the bottom of the swamp. However, even though the presence within the powder had grown extremely thin, it had not dispersed entirely. Perhaps the minimal amount of presence was unable to hide anything from Jian Chen, but to someone else, it was impossible for them to discover it with the senses of their soul as long as some of the presence remained. As a result, the terrifying senses of the soul failed to find the powder. It also failed to discover the natural concealing formation there. In the end, it returned without finding anything after circling the bottom of the swamp for a while. Chapter 2272, The Corpses of Ancient Beasts. Jian Chen was in no hurry to leave the concealing formation. Instead, he held his breath and concealed his presence, carefully hiding there and observing the situation at the bottom of the swamp. Under the protection of the natural concealing formation, he silently waited until the surging mud at the bottom of the swamp gradually settled down. Only then did he become relieved. He knew that the owner of the powerful senses of the soul had failed to find anything. Otherwise, the thing that had shot over would not have been as simple as the senses of their soul. It would be them in person. The senses of the soul seemed to have failed to discover the pile of powder I left there. If the powder was discovered, they would definitely know that someone has been here. If I was them, I'd definitely pay closer attention here or even visit this place in person, thought Jian Chen as his eyes shone brighter and brighter. Originally, he believed the rock powder he discarded could no longer hide anything as the presence from the fortune jade had leaked away. After all, the rock powder was no longer able to hide from him. Only now did he suddenly realize that while he could sense the rock powder, that did not mean other experts could sense the power as well. If the layer of rock around the fortune jade was used properly, it would have unimaginable uses. It's just a pity that I've realized this too late. I've chipped off all the rock already, so the presence in them is constantly leaking away. They won't last for long. Jian Chen was filled with regret. He sighed gently before quickly dismissing his thoughts. He temporarily put the matter of the fortune jade aside and began to study the world within the concealing formation seriously. There was only darkness as far as the eye could see, with no light at all. It was just completely pitch black. However, the darkness there did not affect Jian Chen at all. His eyes shone brightly, directly piercing through the darkness and seeing the scene around him completely. Exposed before Jian Chen was a long, narrow, and gloomy tunnel that led straight into the ground. The tunnel was twisted, spiraling down into the earth. It was impossible to see its bottom, which made it even more impossible to tell its depth. Jian Chen sent out the senses of his soul instinctively, but to his surprise, the entire tunnel was filled with a mysterious energy that caused great obstruction to the senses of his soul. Even with his soul that had changed drastically after fusing with a sliver of chaotic force, having gained various unbelievable abilities, it was only able to expand 5 kilometers into the tunnel. He had no idea how deep the tunnel was. Obviously, he found nothing with the limited range of his soul. This place is not very simple at all. Jian Chen arrived by the corpse and slowly extended his hand to touch it. He wanted to study the internal situation of the corpse. The corpse was warm to the touch, not icy cold. However, before Jian Chen could touch it properly, his face suddenly changed, and with a great jolt, he wrenched back his hand immediately. As if he was struck heavily, he staggered backwards. The ancient beast was just too powerful when it was still alive. Although it was dead now and reduced to a corpse, the tremendous vital energy within its body continued to circulate constantly. Just the regular circulation had sent Jian Chen retreating. If it was not for reaching the major achievement of the chaotic body, he probably would have been heavily injured by that alone. So powerful. Jian Chen was extremely shocked. He sensed his painful right arm that almost shattered from the huge burden as he was in awe. The ancient beast that had died many years ago and had its vital energy drained still possessed such terrifying might. Just how terrifying was it supposed to be when it was still alive then? Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and he saw another blurry shadow in the distance. It was colossal. With a single movement, Jian Chen shot off like an arrow into the distance to see what was there. Very soon, he arrived before the second colossal shadow. He was completely taken back when he saw what it was. The shadow also happened to be a huge, ancient beast. He had no idea how long it had been dead for, and it was also surrounded by shackles upon shackles that plunged into the flesh. The shackles constantly drained away the tremendous vital energy and funneled it towards the depths of the cavern. What is this place? Jian Chen was astounded. Both of these ancient beasts were extremely powerful and must have made a name for themselves when they were still alive, but they had been shackled underground on the desolate plain now, reduced to tools that provided vital energy. Chapter 2273, The Headless Ape, Just What Is in the Depths of This Cavern? It actually needs the constant supply of vital energy from 2 powerful ancient beast corpses, Jian Chen thought. He could not help but look towards the depths as he showed both surprise and doubt. In the end, Jian Chen did not try to touch the 2 corpses recklessly. The 2 ancient beasts were just too powerful when they were alive. As such, even after their deaths, Jian Chen still could not endure their residual might. Just the circulation of their vital energy could injure a few experts who had just reached the primordial realm. Afterwards, Jian Chen continued his investigation in the huge cavern, and his shock grew greater. To his surprise, he discovered that there were far more than just 2 corpses. He discovered a total of 6 colossal corpses of ancient beasts in various places. Without any exception, the 6 corpses were all covered in shackles as their tremendous vital energy was drawn away endlessly, delivered into the depths of the cavern. The 6 corpses varied in shape, and they all originated from different species. There was a mountainous serpent dragon as well as a winged, golden dragon that stood as large as a planet. They were extremely powerful, where the pressure from their corpses seemed to be able to make the sky collapse and silence everything. What extravagance! Who arranged all of this? Jian Chen was shocked. 6 corpses of terrifyingly powerful ancient beasts gathered together had quite the mental impact. He believed that any single one of them definitely would have been an invincible existence on the desolate plain if they were still alive, where no one could stop them. Unfortunately, they had already died many years ago. Continuing onwards, Jian Chen discovered a seventh corpse several tens of thousand kilometers away very soon. It was a humanoid being. She seemed like a young woman with great beauty, standing several hundred meters tall. She gave off a supreme presence of invincibility as an undefeatable battle intent revolved around her. She seemed like a goddess of war. This person was clearly not human. A feathered pair of colossal, golden wings draped down her back naturally. They were extremely pretty. Even though she no longer bore the presence of life, every single feather shone with resplendent golden light. It was dazzling as powerful energy circulate within. However, her fate was also the most chilling. A metal chain stretched over from the depths of the cavern and split into three, piercing her dantian, heart, and the area between her eyes. The surging vital energy within her was constantly drained away by the metal chains that stretched towards the depths of the dwelling. Jian Chen became completely numb as he looked at the humanoid being that was hundreds of meters tall. He had completely fallen silent as his heart weighed heavily. After remaining there for a while, he continued on his way. Before long, he discovered an eighth corpse. The corpse belonged to a human expert. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He sat on the ground in golden robes as his eyes remained closed. A tremendous sense of righteousness revolved around the corpse. A metal chain had also been split into three here, piercing his dantian, heart, and the area between the eyes. The human expert had also died many years ago. He possessed no presence of life at all, only leaving behind the tremendous vital energy. Jian Chen had no idea how powerful the human expert was when he was still alive. Even though just a corpse remained, Jian Chen felt chills as his heart shivered when he stood before him. Clearly, the human expert's strength when he was still alive was no weaker than the six ancient beasts and the winged, humanoid being. Jian Chen stood several meters away as he stared at the human expert deeply. Sorrow filled his eyes. He knew that the human expert had not been someone sinful. The sense of righteousness that never dispersed was proof. He was definitely a straightforward man of righteousness. However, his fate was so chilling. He had been reduced to a tool to supply vital energy. Jian Chen felt grief from the bottom of his heart at this moment. However, he also knew that there was nothing he could do with his current strength. In the end, he bowed at the human expert deeply before leaving. Jian Chen continued on his way. He followed the chains and remained vigilant along the way, making his way towards the depths of the cavern. He seriously wanted to know just what was hidden in the depths of the cavern that required such terrifying amounts of vital energy. Before long, Jian Chen finally arrived at the depths. What he saw was a sea of blood. Terrifying vital energy shone with dazzling, blood-red light, dyeing the surroundings the same color. The crashing of waves constantly rang out from the sea of blood. The tremendous vital energy surged constantly in there, erupting with astonishing ripples of energy that possessed devastating might. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared right ahead. He did not pay too much attention to the sea of blood. Instead, he focused on what was above the sea of blood. There was a huge ape covered in long, thick fur that hovered above the sea of blood without moving at all. The ape's fur was a dark gold. It lied there without moving at all and was missing a head. Only a colossal body remained. The ape had also died many years ago. The 8 chains gathered above the ape's corpse, vaguely forming a profound and complicated formation. It drew in the vital energy from the 8 corpses, and after being converted in the formation, it was poured into the ape. Jian Chen even discovered that the residual vital energy in the sea of blood below the ape's corpse poured into the corpse at an extremely gradual rate as well. It was slowly absorbed by the ape. The ape was not filled with a presence of death. Instead, it was brimming with life. Even though the life force was like nothing compared to the ape's shocking strength, it meant that the ape had not completely died yet at the very least. Its body still possessed a certain level of vitality. Has the tremendous vital energy been drained from the 8 great experts just to rear and support this headless ape that died long ago? Jian Chen was astounded as he stared at the ape closely. Who did all of this? Jian Chen looked at the cavern. He could already vaguely guess that someone was probably trying to revive the ape. Just nurturing the body of the ape required the corpses of 8 monstrously powerful experts. Then just how powerful was this ape with dark gold fur? Jian Chen took a step to approach the ape up ahead. He wanted to study it closer. However, when he reached 100 kilometers from the ape's corpse, terrifying vital energy erupted from the ape's body. Like a storm, it rushed towards Jian Chen in a single instance. Chapter 2274, The 8 Experts. Jian Chen's face changed drastically. Without any hesitation, he retreated rapidly, but the vital energy was just too fast. In the end, it still struck Jian Chen with great force. Spurt. Blood sprayed out from Jian Chen's mouth as he was knocked away. The vital energy was just too terrifying. Even with the protection of the chaotic body, he still became quite injured. The eruption of energy from the ape's body immediately caused the sea of blood there to toss and turn. At the same time, ancient, lingering consciousnesses within the cavern awakened from their slumber as if they had been startled. Through his unique soul, Jian Chen immediately sensed the consciousnesses awaken in the cavern. It made him become uneasy. Do not get within 100 kilometers of the ancient great ape. How many years has it been? Finally, a living being has come, it's a pity that he's too weak. The consciousnesses all awakened and emitted mental pulses that echoed through the cavern. 8 blurry, illusionary figures appeared around Jian Chen. 2 of them were extremely familiar to Jian Chen. The first one was a beautiful woman. She possessed a pair of golden wings on her back and seemed exactly the same as the 7th corpse he had discovered. The only difference was that the 7th corpse stood several hundred meters tall, while the figure before him was the size of a human. The second familiar figure was the human expert he saw that gave off a sense of righteousness. Jian Chen glanced past the 6 other figures. They varied in age and gender, but they were all like apparitions as well. It was impossible for Jian Chen not to realize that the 6 remaining figures were the 6 colossal beasts he saw at the very start. However, they had not presented themselves in their original forms but as humans. Junior Jian Chen greets the 8 seniors. Jian Chen immediately clasped his fist towards the 8 illusionary figures as he showed respect from the bottom of his heart. This was respect towards power because he knew the 8 figures possessed extremely terrifying power when they were still alive. They could easily unleash devastating might, where they could disperse a galaxy with the flip of a hand. The 8 experts all looked at Jian Chen. As they studied Jian Chen, they could not help but shake their heads. Undisguised disappointment filled their faces. Indeed, he's too weak. We've waited for so many years, yet only a junior as weak as this has come. Sigh, he has already awakened our lingering consciousnesses. We don't have much time left, it's impossible for our lingering consciousnesses to keep existing since then. Once we're awakened, we'll disperse before long. It's just a pity that he cannot fulfill our request. We are out of options, so let's still try it, the 8 experts discussed with one another as they showed much helplessness. Jian Chen seemed to make out something from their conversation. He clasped his hands at the 8 experts and said, "Seniors, may I ask what you want me to do? If there's anywhere I am of use, and it is within my abilities, I will definitely assist you with all that I have." The illusionary figures of the 8 experts hovered in the air. After hearing Jian Chen's words, they entered a short moment of thought. Afterwards, the human expert said, "You've already seen Gusta's body, so you must also understand that our existence is only to provide abundant vital energy to nourish Gusta's body." Gusta? That headless ape? Jian Chen asked. That's right. The name of the ape is Gusta. He's the most powerful king of the ancient great apes. He died many years ago, having been beheaded. Although he seemed like he's dead, he's not completely dead. A sliver of life still remains. The experts of the ancient great apes wholeheartedly want to revive Gusta, so the 8 of us were trapped here by the 2 other kings of the ancient great apes. They used an ancient secret technique to drain our vital energy so that they could revive Gusta, said the human expert. Jian Chen came to a realization from that. Originally, he thought that the 8 experts had died in battle elsewhere before having their corpses being collected by someone and gathered here. He had never thought that the 8 of them had been trapped here while they were still alive. Every single one of the 8 experts was extremely powerful. Even after dying many years ago, they were still enough to make Jian Chen shivered. He struggled to imagine just how powerful the people who were able to trap such terrifying experts here would be. At this moment, the winged woman said, "The ancient great apes want to use the 8 of us to revive their most powerful king. Naturally, we won't let them get what they wish. Not only will we prevent them from succeeding, but we'll completely destroy Gusta's body as well. However, the 8 of us are dead after all. All that remains is a sliver of consciousness that bears regret from our lives. We can't complete what needs to be done." The woman looked at Jian Chen deeply. "As a result, we can only leave the matter of destroying Gusta's corpse to you." Jian Chen's heart sank when he heard that. He said bitterly, "Seniors, I may have to disappoint you. My strength is puny. I can't even approach Gusta's corpse, let alone destroy it." Jian Chen felt troubled. Even if he possessed the strength to destroy Gusta's body, he would not be willing to do so. This was because once he did that, he would have completely offended the ancient great apes. "You don't need to worry. We've already set up everything when we were still alive. We just don't have the power to carry it out ourselves." The human expert said, "We've already engraved many layers of forbidden formations within our bodies. Once it's activated, it'll connect all of our bodies, and the remaining vital energy will fuse together. Even though our vital energy has been constantly drained away during all these years and only a bare minimum remains, there's still more vital energy when you pour it all together compared to any one of us at our peak conditions. We'll use the terrifying vital energy to deal a powerful attack through the formations, which would be enough to destroy Gusta's body. My bloodline contains the power of corpses. Humph, the ancient great apes dares to murder me, so I will never let them have things easy. Not only will I destroy Gusta's body, but my power of curses will also use Gusta's bloodline as a medium to curse all the clansmen of the ancient great apes across space. It'll make all of them pay a heavy price." An old man with a hooked nose fumed among the 8 experts. "The ancient great apes should become extinct," the figures from the other ancient beasts all said together. They were filled with hatred. "If I really do something like that, I probably won't be able to avoid being hunted down by the ancient great apes. That'll be both an arduous and fruitless matter for me to complete," said Jian Chen. Chapter 2275, The 8 Laws. You don't need to worry. We won't treat you unfairly. Moreover, you won't get hunted down by the experts of the ancient great apes because this cavern has already become filled with our formations. Coupled with the suppression from the presence of our bodies, it's impossible for any of your puny presence to linger. Moreover, our powerful consciousnesses from when we were still alive have interfered with the heavenly secrets here, disturbing the laws here. Hence, even abilities like turning back time will be rendered useless. Without any exaggeration, everything you do in this cavern will leave behind no traces at all. The experts of the ancient great apes naturally won't be able to find you," said the human expert. "If you help us, the 8 of us will give you a fortuitous encounter. It definitely won't be arduous and fruitless for you," said the winged woman. "A fortuitous encounter? May I ask what kind of fortuitous encounter?" Jian Chen became interested. He looked at the peak experts who must have been renowned when they were still alive. It was impossible for the fortuitous encounters they left behind to be disappointing. "We can give you our golden cores of laws." "Kid, I wonder if that's enough," a burly, red-haired, middle-aged man said. "Golden cores of laws. Jian Chen could not help but cry out when he heard that. Once an expert's comprehension of the laws of the world reached a certain level, it would result in a reserve of laws. This reserve was condensed from the laws of the world. It hid the mysteries of the laws of the world, which was why it was called a golden core of laws. If I obtain your golden cores of laws, will I be able to reach the same level as you in a short amount of time? Jian Chen was interested. The red-haired man chuckled from Jian Chen's ignorance. He bellowed out, "Kid, you really have let your imaginations run wild. Reaching our former level through a golden core of laws alone. Do you really think the laws of the world are that easy to comprehend? The comprehension of laws within a golden core of laws will only remain without dispersing through the maintenance of special ancient techniques. As a result, the golden cores of laws we've left behind have almost run dry, where the comprehension that remains is less than a tenth of its peak condition. However, even with that being the case, a single golden core of laws can allow a deity to reach the primordial realm within 1,000 years. Apart from the golden cores of laws, we've prepared 3 portions of vital energy as well. The amount of energy within each portion should be able to increase your strength by quite a lot at your current level. Aside from that, we'll pass on our supreme secret techniques that we invented ourselves. We've spent a lengthy amount of time to perfect them, so we don't wish to see them become lost. The remaining expert said, laying down various benefits. It had to be mentioned that the remuneration they offered was extremely plentiful, tempting Jian Chen deeply. He struggled to decline. "All right, I agree. What do I have to do now?" Jian Chen asked. "We're only a sliver of consciousness now, and will truly disperse in the surroundings soon. In order to prevent you from going back on your word, swear to the laws of the world first." "All right." Jian Chen immediately swore an oath. After he did so, he discovered that there seemed to be an invisible restraint around him. He knew that this was the bond of the oath, so he stopped thinking about it. Under the guidance of the 8 experts, he arrived beside their bodies. Afterwards, the 8 figures all formed seals with their hands, and in the next moment, 8 long streaks of golden light shot over and hovered before them. Jian Chen looked at the 8 golden core of laws that shone brightly. Even though they seemed the same on the surface, they actually contained completely different laws. The 8 laws were the laws of curses, the laws of strength, the laws of corrosion, the laws of creation, the laws of fire, the laws of destruction, the laws of the sword, and the laws of space. The laws of the sword came from the righteous human expert. If you want to activate the formations we've cast down to destroy Gusta's body, you need to comprehend our laws first. Only then can you come in contact with our bodies and awaken the last portion of power hidden within them. And to awaken that power, you need to comprehend all the laws we've left behind to God King, because only such a level will be enough to awaken our power. Once the power within our bodies have been awakened, you need a primordial realm expert to pour energy into the center of the formation and activate the formations we've cast down. Once the formation is activated, our vital energy will fuse together under the influence of the formation and unleash a powerful strike to destroy Gusta's body, as well as the ancient great apes' plan to revive their most powerful king. The supreme secret techniques we've created are hidden within the golden core of laws. They've merged with the comprehension inside, so inheriting our golden core of laws means that you'll be able to grasp our secret techniques as well. Kid, are you ready? Get ready to inherit the power of our laws. The 8 experts said. They were about to fuse the golden core of laws into Jian Chen. Hold on, you can't get me to inherit it all alone, right? Comprehending 8 laws simultaneously will affect my cultivation speed, Jian Chen called out in a hurry to stop them. If he really had to comprehend the 8 laws, he would have to spend much more time on cultivation compared to before. There's only you, and the 8 laws is the only method to awaken the power within our bodies. As a result, only you can inherit the 8 laws. The 8 golden cores of laws can't be taken out either. Once they have been taken out, you won't be able to conceal them from the heavenly secrets no matter what you do. People will be able to discover you. Once the experts of the ancient great apes sense it, all of our setup will go to waste. Our consciousnesses are about to disperse. We can't wait for you to go out and find other people. As a result, we have no choice but to have you inherit the 8 laws alone. Hold on, who said I'm alone? With a thought, the Inata tower appeared, and Jian Chen called out Kaiya first. Afterwards, he stowed the Inata tower away and took out the divine hall. He called out, Qing Yishuan, Heiya, come out. Chapter 2276, Fortuitous Encounter. The Inata Tower. I never thought you'd be carrying one of the 3 treasures of the Inata Grand Prime, the Inata Tower. The Inata Tower is of the highest quality as well as one of the most powerful god artifacts in the world. I never thought it would become so damaged. The only people that can damage the Inata Tower to such a degree must be one of the sovereigns of the world who has reached the limits of Grand Prime. Looking at the slashes on the Inata Tower, the Inata Grand Prime probably fought with the strongest expert of the Immortals world, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. It looks like a lot has happened in a saint's world since we passed away. It's very likely that the infinite cataclysm descended. But none of that has got anything to do with us. The 8 experts all sighed emotionally when they saw the Inata Tower. Clearly, even though they were just a lingering sliver of consciousness from their former lives, they still possessed all of their memories. Jian Chen, where is this place? And who are they? Kaiya asked in doubt as soon as she walked out of the Inata Tower. She studied the huge cavern around her before looking at the 8 experts in the end. The light in her eyes flickered with surprise and uncertainty. For some reason, she felt a strange sense of familiarity from the figures of the 8 experts as if she had seen them before. Kaiya could swear that she had never seen them before, but she just happened to experience such a feeling. Jian Chen gave Kaiya a simple explanation, giving her a rough understanding of what had happened here. Afterwards, Heiya and Qing Yishuan emerged from the divine hall as well. Heiya's presence was much more powerful and denser than before. He had made huge advances during his secluded cultivation. With the assistance of all the cultivation resources and the flower of ways from Jian Chen, Heiya had reached the very peak of God King. He was preparing to break through to the primordial realm now. As soon as Heiya emerged from the divine hall, he arrived behind Jian Chen. Even though he was very curious about this place, he did not ask anything at all. He truly treated himself as a servant. As for Qing Yishuan, she bit her lip gently. She glanced at Jian Chen and Kaiya and said nothing at all. She arrived behind Jian Chen silently and stood beside Heiya. Jian Chen still had his disguise on right now and so did Kaiya. Hence, Qing Yishuan failed to realize their real identities even now. However, as soon as Qing Yishuan arrived behind Jian Chen, she was pulled in front of him. Jian Chen said nothing at all and pushed her forward. He said to the human expert, Senior, she also comprehends the laws of the sword. Can she inherit your legacy? The limits of the comprehension within the golden cores of laws was less than a tenth of what the 8 experts possessed when they were still alive. Let alone reaching their former level of cultivation, but even breaking through to chaotic prime would be wishful thinking with the golden cores of laws alone. It would basically only be enough to reach the primordial realm. Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of the sword had reached late God King already. He only needed to take another step, and he would reach the primordial realm. Not only did his soul change, allowing him to comprehend the laws of the world with greater clarity now, but he also possessed the fortune jade. He believed that this entire process would not take him long. As a result, it would be a little too wasteful if he used the golden core of laws with the laws of the sword. If Qing Yishuan inherited it, not only would he be able to assist his acquaintance, but he would be able to use the golden core of laws to its full capacity as well. Qing Yishuan was pushed forwards by Jian Chen. She had no idea what was going on. Afterwards, when she heard Jian Chen mention the legacy, she immediately became stunned. She was at a loss. The illusionary human expert who hovered in the air looked at Qing Yishuan. After studying her slightly, he nodded in satisfaction. She can. He did not even ask for Qin Yishuan's agreement. With that, the golden core of laws hovering before him turned into a golden streak of light and shot into Qin Yishuan's head. Immediately, Qin Yishuan exploded with golden light. Extremely pure strands of power from the laws of the sword revolved around her, causing her to close her eyes uncontrollably and enter a state of comprehension. She was accepting the legacy. As if the human expert's final wish had been completed, he smiled in liberation, and his illusionary body began to vanish. A while later, it had completely dispersed. Jian Chen secretly sighed when he looked at how the human expert's consciousness had vanished. He knew that a righteous human expert had completely disappeared from the world. Kaya, you comprehend the laws of creation, destruction, and fire, so you should inherit those three laws. Jian Chen dismissed his thoughts and said to Kaya. However, Kaya remained calm. She did not become excited at all. She glanced at the three golden cores of laws indifferently and said, I don't need it. It's best if you inherit it. Kaya. Jian Chen frowned. Jian Chen, you should know that my comprehension of laws is different from others, and there's only a limited amount of comprehension remaining in these golden cores of laws. They really won't be of any use to me, Kaya said seriously. Jian Chen thought of the possibility that Kaya was the reincarnation of a certain expert from that, and he no longer said anything more. Then he looked at Heiya and asked him which law he wanted to inherit. His talent is far too ordinary. Let alone the fact that it'll be a huge waste if we give him a golden core of laws, but it'll be detrimental to him as well to comprehend two laws of the same time with his talent. That's right. He only needs to focus on comprehending his own law with his talent. Before he becomes a Grand Prime, there's no need to comprehend a second law. The 7 experts objected. Thank you for your bestowment, Master, but I think it's better to follow the recommendations of the seniors and focus on my own law, Heiya added as well. Fair enough, Jian Chen sighed gently. Heiya's talent was indeed nothing special. It was obvious with how he had never made it onto the God King's throne even after becoming a peak God King. He also knew that even when Heiya reached the primordial realm, he would only be a regular primordial realm expert. The top 10 of the God King's throne would be able to hold their ground against him. Even Shui Yunlan could defeat him if she was still a God King. I'll inherit the 7 remaining laws then, Jian Chen said helplessly. Afterwards, he let Kaya and Qin Yishuan, who was still in a state of comprehension, into the Inata Tower and let Heiya back into the Divine Hall. He formally accepted the legacies from the 7 experts. Under the control of the 7 experts, the 7 shining golden cores of laws shot into Jian Chen's forehead as streaks of light. In that instance, Jian Chen shone brightly. The power of the 7 laws revolved around him as the laws of the world seemed to resonate. The consciousnesses of the 7 experts did not disperse. They remained in the surroundings, staring straight at Jian Chen. Excitement and eagerness filled their faces. This kid's soul is extremely strange. I hope we can benefit from his soul. Moreover, he cultivates the chaotic body and has attained quite the accomplishment with it. His vital energy is extremely dense. It's enough to nourish the fragment of our souls. It's just a pity that Swordmaster Yun Qi was simply too stubborn, unwilling to follow us. He has truly died. I can sense that this kid's soul seems to be able to contain all the laws of the world. That's extremely rare. If we can obtain a fragment of his soul and refine it into our own souls, it'll be a huge fortuitous encounter without a doubt. Everyone, we'll meet again in the future. I'll be leaving first. Afterwards, the huge cavern fell completely silent. The consciousnesses of the 7 experts all dispersed in the surroundings. Chapter 2277, Rapid Advance. Having already entered a state of comprehension, Jian Chen did not seem to hear the conversation between the 7 experts. Currently, a layer of dazzling golden light surrounded him. Various laws revolved around him as he entered a state of selflessness where he devoted himself to the comprehension of laws. The laws of creation, destruction, fire, strength, space, corrosion, and curses would appear from time to time, enveloping him. It made the space around him resonate with the laws of the world. Comprehending 7 different laws simultaneously was an especially great challenge to any cultivator, or even impossible. Not only did it require an absolutely astonishing aptitude for comprehension, but there was also a need for an extremely great affinity with the laws of the world. However, it did not seem too difficult for Jian Chen. Jian Chen was able to sense all 3,000 laws. Coupled with the unbelievable transformation of his soul after fusing with the strand of true chaotic force, he became even closer to the laws of the world and was able to sense them with even greater clarity. As a result, Jian Chen basically had no difficulties in comprehending the 7 laws. Moreover, he had already grasped the laws of destruction out of the 7 laws, so he only truly needed to comprehend the remaining 6. In just 7 days, Jian Chen comprehended the first law. He grasped the laws of creation and reached a rudimentary level of comprehension that would be akin to deities. Jian Chen immediately stopped comprehending the laws of creation after reaching this rudimentary level, turning his attention to a second law. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed, and Jian Chen finally roused from cultivation. Apart from the laws of destruction, he had comprehended all 6 remaining laws during that time. They had all formally reached the level of deity. He had grasped them all. 7 golden core of laws hovered silently within his soul. The power within them had not decreased significantly. Clearly, Jian Chen had not depleted the golden core of laws by much at all when he was comprehending the 6 new laws. The 8 seniors said that a single golden core of laws is enough for a deity to reach the primordial realm in 1,000 years. However, I don't need 1,000 years at all to comprehend them to the primordial realm. Jian Chen opened his eyes, and the light in them flickered. He showed great confidence before taking out the piece of fortune jade he had placed in the Inata tower. Fortune jade, it'll all up to you for me to comprehend all these laws to God King. Undisguised excitement filled Jian Chen's face as he looked at the shining fortune jade. Afterwards, he placed the fortune jade on the ground and sat down on it. He began to comprehend the laws of the world. Now, he needed to raise his comprehension of the laws from deity to God King. Only with the power of God King level laws would he be able to awaken the final amount of power hidden within the 8 experts. Immediately, a profound power of fortune radiated out from below along with the presence of laws. Jian Chen promptly felt like he had ingested some comprehension tea. His head cleared up as many ideas flickered through his head. Immediately, he felt his affinity for comprehension skyrocket, where the profound laws of the world became easier to sense and understand. My laws of destruction have already reached late over God. I only need one more step to break through to God King, so let's raise the laws of destruction first, Jian Chen thought. Afterwards, his consciousness began to revolve around the golden core of laws for the laws of destruction in his soul, using what was hidden in there to comprehend. Strands of pure power of laws drifted out from the golden core of laws. Jian Chen did not absorb the power of laws directly. Instead, he used them to comprehend the truths of the world within. Whenever he came to a realization about something, a sliver of the power would fuse into his soul, truly absorbing it. It allowed his comprehension of the laws of destruction to constantly deepen. However, before long, Jian Chen suddenly felt agitated. He instinctively stopped cultivating. When he opened his eyes, he was already frowning. Jian Chen sat on the fortune jade as the resplendent power of fortune completely enveloped him. He sank into his thoughts with his eyes opened. He had entered a state of selflessness as he cultivated, having truly settled down like still water. However, he had suddenly felt agitated for no reason. Moreover, the agitation immediately vanished completely after he stopped cultivating. Jian Chen felt that something was off. He sat on the fortune jade in thought for a very long time as the light in his eyes flickered uneasily. Afterwards, he pushed the sensitivity of the senses of his soul to the limit to inspect every nook and cranny of his body. The 7 golden cores of laws in his soul became his point of focus. In the end, he failed to find any irregularities. Jian Chen thought silently. A strange light flickered through his eyes, and his gaze gradually deepened. A while later, he closed his eyes and continued to comprehend the laws of destruction. Afterwards, he did not feel agitated again, allowing him to comprehend the laws of destruction extraordinarily smoothly. A month later, the power of God King level laws descended and enveloped Jian Chen. His laws of destruction had finally reached God King. Now, his laws of the sword and laws of destruction had both reached the level of God King. His laws of the sword was already at late God King, equivalent to the great perfection of sword spirit. If he took one more step, he would reach the primordial realm, which was equivalent to sword immortal. However, Jian Chen also knew that this step could not be taken easily. Even though his soul was different from before, which allowed him to comprehend the laws of the world with greater clarity, reaching sword immortal was still not something he could achieve in a single day even with the assistance of the fortune jade. The further he went, the more difficult the comprehension and breakthroughs of laws would become. He needed to accumulate understanding and comprehension over time. There really is a secret technique hidden within the golden core of laws. It's just that this secret technique is of quite a high grade. Grasping it will require quite a lot of time for comprehension, but I don't have that time right now. Whatever, I'll just comprehend the secret technique in the future. Let's continue comprehending the laws, thought Jian Chen. He did not stop at all, continuing his comprehension of a second law, the laws of space. In Jian Chen's opinion, since he had already grasped the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction, he was not in need of offensive laws. As a result, out of the remaining laws, the laws of space would clearly be more useful. He had to start from scratch with comprehending the laws of space. Naturally, he would not be able to comprehend it as quickly as the laws of destruction. However, even with that being the case, he only used half a year to reach the level of God Kings with the laws of space. Of course, this was not indicative of how impressive Jian Chen's talent was. Aside from the crucial assistance of the fortune jade, the greatest reason why he could advance so fast was because of the golden core of laws. Jian Chen had only achieved this thanks to the golden core of laws. Like a miracle, he comprehended the law from its rudimentary level to God King in a single sitting. Spatial devouring technique. Cosmos shift. Jian Chen had also inherited the 2 spatial secret techniques after comprehending the laws of space to God King. They were both of extremely high grades. The spatial devouring technique was an offensive technique, while Cosmos shift seemed more like a technique for escape from its description. Chapter 2278, The Storm Continues. Through the powers of space, break free from the restraints of the world and stride over the flow of time to travel hundreds of million kilometers away. Jian Chen's eyes lit up from the description of the technique as he became interested. He discovered that not only was Cosmos shift an extremely powerful method of escape, but it was also an impressive method for traveling. It could let him cross hundreds of million kilometers in an instance. That was basically across an entire Great Plain. Some Great Plains were not even hundreds of million kilometers across. Clearly, this secret technique was more than suitable for traveling in outer space. It would even save him from using teleportation formations across planes, allowing him to save a great sum of 5-colored divine crystals. I feel like this Cosmos shift is far more difficult to use than the spatial devouring technique. It's just far too hard to use it with the comprehension of laws at the level of God Kings. I even doubt whether I can gain a rudimentary grasp over the technique with my level of laws of space. But without a single doubt, it'll take an extremely long time to master it, Jian Chen thought. The 8 experts were far too terrifying when they were still alive. Their level of cultivation had exceeded his imagination. Supreme secret techniques they created would naturally be of an impressive quality. The mysteries of the world and the secret techniques used were just too profound to him right now. As a result, it was impossible for him to gain a rudimentary grasp over these secret techniques as easily as he did with the radiant arts. There's still around a year before the competition between the candidates begins. I'll take advantage of this time and comprehend a few more laws, thought Jian Chen before continuing to comprehend the law. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, another half a year went by. On this day, Jian Chen roused from his selfless state of cultivation, and God King level laws revolved around him once again. With this half a year of comprehension, his laws of strength had reached early God King. Just as I had expected. The laws of strength can indeed amplify my chaotic force. If I fuse the laws of strength into my chaotic body will become 30% stronger. This increase is not just in toughness but in brute strength as well. Jian Chen secretly rejoiced when he sensed the changes that the laws of strength had brought him. And that's only the laws of strength at early God King. In the future, as my comprehension of the laws of strength rapidly deepen, and my cultivation rapidly increases, the amplifying effect will become greater and greater as well. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly. The help that the laws of strength brought to him was just too great. It directly increased his battle prowess. Chapter 2279, The News from the Azure Peking. These outsiders are becoming more and more reckless. They even went to the Celestial Sword Saint's Sword God Mountains. They are far too confident. They think they can do whatever they want, striking fear in everyone's hearts as long as they mention the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. However, they need to consider who the Celestial Sword Saint is. These outsiders can indeed overwhelm us if they work together, but the Celestial Sword Saint has never taken them seriously. These outsiders sure were cautious. They visited the Sword God Mountains politely and did not barge in forcefully. Otherwise, I think we will see over a dozen heads fly into the air. Sigh, what a pity. The Celestial Sword Saint didn't actually take action. When the Celestial Sword Saint demonstrated his courage and forced the peak experts to retreat in low spirits, the native experts and important figures of various organizations all allowed their senses of their souls to meet. They discussed with one another, feeling extremely satisfied. There was also a tiny portion of pity. In the past few days, the peak organizations that originally reigned over the desolate plain, had been searched fearlessly by these outsiders under the name of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. They had already begun to nurse grievances as they became furious over the whole matter. However, they were helpless because of their strength and their fear towards the first majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. The Celestial Sword Saint's impressive reply finally allowed these peak organizations to feel proud and satisfied again. It's just a pity that the Celestial Sword Saint only cares about cultivation and none of the worldly matters, making it impossible for him to interfere with any of the conflicts on the desolate plain. Otherwise, these outsiders would not act so brazenly as long as he stood forward. What do you know? He's what you truly call a sage who stands above all. Some peak experts expressed their disappointment over how the Celestial Sword Saint allowed these outsiders to act as they pleased on the desolate plain. When the outsiders truly sensed the Celestial Sword Saint's strength, they became slightly more obedient, unwilling to set foot in the Sword God Mountains again. However, their search for Jian Chen still continued. 3 months later, when there were only 2 months until the competition between the candidates for Chosen Saint, the outsiders finally gradually lost their patience. There were so many of them, and they had turned over every stone on the desolate plain several times, yet they had still failed to find any trace of Jian Chen. Gradually, more and more of them began to waver and believe the rumor that Jian Chen had already fled the desolate plain. As a result, a few clans were ready to pull out from the search on the desolate plain. Jian Chen is still on the desolate plain. However, just when they were about to leave, a voice rang out far and wide from outer space. The azure-robed, sheet-white Azure Peking hovered beyond the desolate plain. His eyes were vicious as heavy killing intent revolved around him. Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, how are you certain that Jian Chen is on the desolate plain? An outsider asked from the desolate plain. He did not speak loudly, but it crossed the huge distance, allowing the Azure Pen King to hear his words clearly. I was once in possession of Jian Chen's blood. With the blood, I used secret techniques several times to search for him. Even though I no longer have the blood, I still have a vague sense of his traces, which is why I'm certain that Jian Chen is still on the desolate plain, said the Azure Pen King. Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, where is Jian Chen then? The outsiders on the desolate plain all became interested when they heard that. They had searched for so long, and finally, they were about to find where Jian Chen was hidden. However, many of the experts felt admiration towards Jian Chen at the same time. He was a puny god king, yet he could avoid so many peak experts until now. Not everyone could accomplish something like that. If I still had a droplet of Jian Chen's blood, it would be very easy to find him on the desolate plain. However, I've already lost the blood now. My ability to sense him comes from the last time I used the secret technique. However, this feeling has become fainter and fainter. It'll vanish completely within 3 years at most, the Azure Pen King said from outer space. He knew that once he completely lost track of Jian Chen, it would truly be impossible for him to find Jian Chen in the vast saints' world. As a result, having run out of options, he could only reveal this information. Jian Chen, even if I can't get the Inata Tower, I will never leave you alive, the Azure Pen King thought to himself. He was a vengeful person. Once someone wronged him, he would never miss a single chance to kill them unless they were powerful to the point where he could do nothing to them, like the Celestial Sword Saint. Even towards the Celestial Sword Saint, he harbored bitter resentment. If there was a day where he was more powerful than the former, or if the opportunity ever presented itself, he would attack the Celestial Sword Saint without any hesitation. And who was that black-robed man accompanying Jian Chen in the miniature world before? Once the matters here end, I'll definitely find out about your true identity, thought the Azure Pen King. He also bore grudges towards Mo Tianyun from being hunted down last time. The news from the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance immediately made all the outsiders dismiss the thought of retreating, while the rumor that Jian Chen had already left the desolate plain vanished. Immediately, the experts on the desolate plain began to search for Jian Chen one last time in greater detail. Jian Chen has hidden very well. He has used a treasure to disguise his identity and presence. It's impossible to find him through regular methods. However, no matter how he hides, it's very difficult for him to disguise his blood. It's impossible to peer into Jian Chen's past and future, but even if that's the case, we'll just search all the God Kings and Infinite Primes on the desolate plain one by one. As long as we find someone that we cannot peer into, we'll interrogate them immediately, that's right. We'll go through them one by one and do one last search. If we fail to find him after the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's connection to Jian Chen vanishes, we'll give up on it then. Let's take action personally and personally peer into those who are God Kings or above. We'll directly check the blood of those below God Kings, just in case he has concealed his strength and mingled among the weaker cultivators. I refuse to believe we can't find him like this. Let's do it for the last time then. Who finds Jian Chen and obtains the Inata Tower in the end will be up to luck, the peak experts made up their minds. After all, the desolate plain was so vast, and there were so many God Kings. Even with how great their cultivations were, checking every single God King would be exhausting for them. This time, they had truly made up their minds. Chapter 2280, Vital Energy. While the peak experts went to extreme means to find Jian Chen, the cause of all of this, Jian Chen, hid in the cavern underground as he devoted himself to cultivation. He was completely unaware of his surroundings, focusing everything on comprehending the laws of curses. Invisible laws of the world revolved in his surroundings, giving off the power of curses. It was filled with the mysteries of laws, as if all the curses in the world were hidden within. Below him, there was a piece of fortune jade shaped like a grindstone. It shone with dazzling light as it gave off the power of fortune, filling his soul and allowing his mind to become flexible and unpredictable. It resonated with the world to a greater extent, becoming even closer to the laws. Cultivation was timeless. After who knows how long, a formation engraved in the ground around the fortune jade suddenly lit up. It gave off a wondrous pulse, allowing Jian Chen to gradually rouse from cultivation. As soon as he stopped cultivating, the power of curses around him immediately vanished. It had completely disappeared. It was a rousing formation, a simple formation cast down by Jian Chen. It could rouse him from cultivation at a certain set time, preventing him from becoming too involved with cultivation and missing out on the opportunity to enter the Tower of Radiance. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. He glanced at the formation he cast down on the ground indifferently and murmured softly, "There are still 2 months left. I can't keep comprehending laws." His laws of curses did not reach God King like his laws of strength and his laws of space after the few months of comprehension. It remained at mid over God. There was just far too little time. It was impossible for him to comprehend the laws of curses from deity to God King in one sitting within 4 short months. Jian Chen stood up from the fortune jade and sent the senses of his soul into the Inata Tower. Qing Yishuan sat on the ground on the 9th floor with her eyes closed as she comprehended the laws of the sword. Sharp strands of sword qi gathered as the power of the laws of the sword revolved around her. Jian Chen did not enter the Inata Tower. Instead, he checked on Qing Yishuan's situation with the senses of his soul. He silently observed Qing Yishuan, who had become unaware of her surroundings and could not help but think about the sudden agitation he experienced when he first began comprehending the laws. Immediately, the light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. He was no ordinary person but a powerful God King who had grasped a portion of the truths of the world, having comprehended multiple laws. More importantly, he was a powerful cultivator who could kill infinite primes. He would never experience any feelings for no reason, so he was certain that something bad had happened. However, he was unable to find the source no matter how hard he searched or thought about it. As a result, he could only bury the matter in his heart. Now that he saw Qin Yishuan inherit the golden core of laws from the human expert, Jian Chen could not help but connect it to the agitation he experienced before. For a time, he had no idea whether it was a blessing or a curse for Qin Yishuan to inherit one of the laws from the 8 experts. However, when he thought about how the righteous presence never dispersed from the human expert even after death, he stopped worrying. He knew that even if there was a scheme involving the golden cores of laws, bearing other intentions, at the very least, the human expert would never do something like that, as it did not match up to his righteous bearing at all. At Qin Yishuan's current rate, she'll probably need over 200 years before she becomes a God King, Jian Chen observed Qin Yishuan silently. After hesitating slightly, he placed the fortune jade under her. He could control a portion of the Inata Tower's power now, basically making him half a master of the Inata Tower. As a result, he was able to do something like that without disturbing Qin Yishuan at all. I hope that she can reach God King as soon as possible, Jian Chen held anticipation for Qin Yishuan. Just when the senses of his soul were about to recede from the Inata Tower, Kaya suddenly appeared on the 9th floor. As if she knew Jian Chen's senses were present, she said, "Jian Chen, I want to spend some time in the cavern." Jian Chen already knew that the 9 floors within the Inata Tower were unable to obstruct Kaya, so he was not surprised by her sudden appearance at all. Afterwards, Jian Chen let Kaya out of the Inata Tower with a thought. As soon as Kaya appeared in the cavern, she studied the shackled bodies of the 8 experts before looking towards the depths of the cavern, where the strongest king of the ancient great apes, Gusta, was located. She sank into her thoughts. "Kaya, have you discovered something?" Jian Chen asked when he noticed Kaya's unusual behavior. Kaya shook her head. A sliver of bewilderment filled her eyes. She said nothing. Jian Chen did not keep asking. He said to her, "Then be careful. I'll go retrieve the 3 portions of vital energy. Afterwards, Jian Chen left Kai Ye alone and directly flew towards the ancient beasts. The 3 portions of vital energy had been promised to him by 3 of the 8 experts. The original forms of the 3 were all colossal ancient beasts. The method to collect the vital energy had been embedded in Jian Chen's mind as he inherited their legacy. Before long, Jian Chen arrived before one of the ancient beasts. He stood before its huge head and used a secret technique through the power of laws from the legacy before gently pressing his hand on its head, drawing out the vital energy hidden within the beast's body. Soon, a fist-sized ball of pure vital energy appeared in Jian Chen's hand. It radiated with powerful energy. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly as he looked at the portion of vital energy. There was not a lot of vital energy, but its purity had completely exceeded his imaginations. The terrifying energy within it astonished him. What terrifying energy ripples! Just the energy within a single portion is enough to raise the chaotic body from the 12th layer to the 13th with some left over. Jian Chen was amazed. He thought about the tremendous amount of resources he had to spend to make the breakthrough to the 13th layer, yet now, the vital energy in his hands was more than enough to cover all of it. This portion of vital energy is tremendous to me, but it's not even 1/10,000th of the ancient beast when it was still alive, Jian Chen thought. When he drew out the portion, the tremendous vital energy within the ancient beast did not decrease at all. It was just that the remaining vital energy had been sealed in by the shackles, preventing him from extracting it. The portion he extracted had not been sealed up by the shackles because the ancient beast had left it behind when it was still alive. Afterwards, Jian Chen approached the other 2 ancient beasts and used various methods to obtain 2 more portions of vital energy. Every portion was extremely powerful, and the energy contained was so tremendous that it was enough to fulfill his needs to break through from the 12th layer to the 13th layer. Unfortunately, my chaotic body has already reached the 13th layer. I need 10 times more energy to break through to the 14th layer compared to the 13th layer. Chapter 2281, Leaving the Cavern. Whatever, I'll absorb these 3 portions first. Jian Chen crossed his legs and sat down. First, he carefully studied the 3 portions of vital energy. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with them, he immediately began to absorb their tremendous energy. Although the 3 portions of vital energy were nowhere near enough for his chaotic body to advance to the next layer, it did make his chaotic Naiden swell up, increasing the chaotic force within it. As a result, the energy he needed for his future breakthrough had lessened slightly. Jian Chen had already reached the major achievement of the chaotic body, so he both absorbed and refined energy at an extremely fast speed. One of the portions of vital energy in his hand decreased at a visible rate. Not only did the vital energy contain a tremendous energy, but it also possessed a tiny portion of the 3 vital energies and some of their fleshly essence. As a result, Jian Chen benefited tremendously when he absorbed the 3 portions of vital energy. Not only could he feel his chaotic Naiden rapidly swell up, but his 3 vital energies increased as well. A pleasant feeling immediately overwhelmed him, especially when the fleshly essence fused with his chaotic body. All his pores opened up uncontrollably as every single cell and every single atom in him devoured the scarce fleshly essence greedily like hungry tigers. The fleshly essence came from 3 extremely powerful beasts after all, so they were of an extremely high level. It was indeed exceedingly nourishing for Jian Chen's chaotic body. Jian Chen could clearly sense his chaotic body rapidly strengthen as he absorbed the fleshly essence, where the very quality of his body transformed by leaps and bounds. In just 1.5 months, Jian Chen completely absorbed the 3 portions of vital energy. Even though his chaotic body remained at the 13th layer, his body had become slightly tougher than before due to the fleshly essence. My chaotic body is probably no less tough than the 14th layer, Jian Chen rejoiced when he sensed the explosive power within his body. His chaotic body had first been reforged by a strand of true chaotic force when he fused the twin swords. Coupled with the fleshly essence he had just absorbed, his chaotic body had completely exceeded the toughness of the 13th layer. Coupled with the amplification from the laws of strength, my chaotic body will become slightly more powerful once again. I wonder which heavenly layer of infinite prime my current battle prowess is equivalent to, Jian Chen thought. However, he was certain that his current battle prowess was far greater than when he killed the infinite prime on planet Tianming. At this moment, with a flip of his hand, a tender, beautiful flower hovered in his palm. The flower seemed to be intelligent. As soon as it appeared, it swung its body towards Jian Chen like it was trying to curry up to him. It was close to him. This was the immortal devouring orchid that Jian Chen had obtained from the Neptunian divine palace. He had learnt from the sword spirits that the immortal devouring orchid was extremely renowned in the saints' world, and it specialized in devouring the bodies of immortals. Its growth rate was extremely astonishing. However, the immortal devouring flower was just too weak right now, while Jian Chen's opponents were either god kings or primordial realm experts. As a result, the immortal devouring flower could not eat their corpses, so its growth was rather gradual. However, even with that being the case, it had reached the origin realm after ingesting some of Jian Chen's chaotic blood. I'll bestow a droplet of my essence blood to you. Hopefully, you can become a deity soon. Once you become a deity, you should be able to absorb the blood of God Kings slowly. There are 2 God King corpses in the Divine Hall waiting for you. Once you're powerful enough, there will even be the corpse of an infinite prime. Jian Chen dripped a droplet of essence blood onto the immortal devouring orchid. Due to the impressive comments from the sword spirits, Jian Chen held high expectations towards the immortal devouring orchid's future. He would spare no effort to nurture it. The immortal devouring orchid seemed to be able to understand Jian Chen. After receiving the droplet of essence blood, it furled up happily and began absorbing the energy. Although Jian Chen's blood was far more powerful than the blood of God Kings, his blood was unable to harm the orchid at all because he had purposefully controlled it, and the orchid had already accepted him as its master. The orchid was able to absorb it smoothly. Jian Chen stowed the orchid away and went to find Kaya in the cavern. He saw her seated on the ground as she stared into the depths in a daze. Jian Chen, are you about to leave? Kaya looked over and asked Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded and said, the competition between the candidates for the position of chosen saint is about to start. I must head back. Kaya looked at the depths of the cavern and said gently, the vital energy there hides a very terrifying energy. If you can obtain this energy, you will benefit tremendously. Jian Chen immediately looked towards the pool of blood that nourished Gusta's body. He sighed gently, indeed, but approaching that place is very difficult. When he reached there, he thought of something, let me try with the Inata tower. Kaya, for the sake of your safety, enter the tower with me. Kaya nodded. She had no objections. Afterwards, the 2 of them entered the Inata tower, and Jian Chen piloted the tower to approach the pool of blood carefully. When he arrived within 100 kilometers of the pool of blood, it began to surge violently again as if a serpent was stirring up the entire place. Powerful vital energy erupted and shot over. Immediately, space trembled as the chains danced. It seemed like a terrifying storm was being charged up. It was extremely powerful and frightening. The vital energy was just too powerful. The further he advanced, the greater the impact he received. It was truly devastating, where even primordial realm experts dared not venture far in. However, no matter how ferocious it became, it could not stop the Inata tower. Under Jian Chen's control, the Inata tower endured the incoming vital energy, tottering along the way as it rapidly advanced through the violent storm. Jian Chen's eyes gradually began to shine as he watched the Inata tower inch forwards. However, when the Inata tower reached 3 kilometers away from the pool of blood, a powerful barrier suddenly rose up in the end. No matter what Jian Chen did with the Inata tower, he was unable to charge through the barrier. He had been blocked outside. It doesn't work. I can't approach it at all, Jian Chen sighed gently and in pity from within the Inata tower. He could sense that the barrier had been cast down by extremely terrifying experts, and it was probably the handiwork of the other two kings of the ancient great apes. Jian Chen, I want to stay here a little longer, Kaya said from beside Jian Chen. Jian Chen glanced at Kaya with a strange expression, but he nodded in agreement right afterwards. He did not say anything else. After all, this was Kaya's freedom. He had no reason to say no. Moreover, this underground cavern was extremely well hidden. It would be extremely safe if Kaya remained here. Kaya, you have to be careful. Don't get within 100 kilometers of the pool of blood. Do you understand? Jian Chen warned sternly before taking Kaya to somewhere safe and leaving all by himself. Chapter 2282, Blood Medallion. Somewhere on the desolate plain, there was an extremely remote swamp shrouded by poisonous mist. People rarely set foot in this place. Only a few venomous beasts prowled the surroundings, hunting for prey. At this moment, the calm swamp suddenly began to churn in an extremely irregular fashion as if something was about to burst out. The disturbance attracted the prowling beasts. They gathered over quickly as they stared at the place with their cold eyes. Very soon, the churning swamp suddenly burst open. A figure in white robes and shrouded in light silently emerged from the swamp. Unsurprisingly, the figure was Jian Chen. The layer of light around Jian Chen kept the mud away from him. He rose up from the swamp at a steady pace. The moment they saw Jian Chen, the few beasts who were clearly lacking in terms of intelligence immediately produced a deep growl and lunged at him. Jian Chen did not even glance at the beasts. With a wave of his hand, he shot out a few radiant swords and cut them to pieces. Afterwards, he found his bearings and immediately rose up into the air through the use of Radiant Saint Force. He directly headed towards the Radiant Saint Hall. Jian Chen only displayed the speed that a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core could possess, so he did not travel quickly. When he left the swamp and approached a city, he was suddenly stopped by a fighter who seemed to be in his 30s. The fighter was a god and was extremely plump. However, he seemed like a simple and honest man. His appearance gave off a rather foolish vibe. Stop. Please show your blood medallion, the man said with a soft, muffled voice. Jian Chen frowned when he heard that. He had remained underground for about 2 years, so he had no clue at all regarding what had happened in the outside world. He had no idea what this blood medallion was at all. Before Jian Chen said anything, another middle-aged man flew over from the distance. The middle-aged man was dressed exactly the same as the plump man, clearly originating from the same organization. The middle-aged man arrived beside the plump man and smacked the back of his head. He said, "You idiot. You might not recognize the attire of the Radiant Saint Hall, but you should recognize Radiant Saint Force at the very least. The blood medallions of disciples from the Radiant Saint Hall will obviously be checked by people with greater status. What are you taking part for?" Afterwards, the middle-aged man clasped his hand towards Jian Chen amiably, paying no attention to Jian Chen's one-colored soul core at all. He said, "Little brother, my junior is rather slow. I hope that you can forgive the offense he has caused just then." Jian Chen smiled indifferently. After exchanging pleasantries with the middle-aged man, he asked, "Senior, may I ask what this blood medallion is about?" Seeing how friendly the disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall behaved, without putting on any of the haughtiness that belonged to a disciple of a peak sect, the middle-aged man immediately gained a great impression of Jian Chen. However, Jian Chen's question had surprised him. "You actually don't know about the blood medallion, little brother?" The middle-aged man stared at Jian Chen strangely. "I have been cultivating in seclusion in the wilderness for 2 years. I haven't been paying attention to the matters of the world around me, so I have no idea what happened during that time," Jian Chen said. "Is that the case?" The middle-aged man came to a realization before explaining with great patience, this blood medallion has actually only appeared recently as well. It's something that the peak experts of the desolate plain have been distributing with the many peak organizations. They've ordered all people on the desolate plain, regardless of cultivation, where even ordinary mortal who had never cultivated before are included, to have their blood tested with a wondrous treasure. Afterwards, all of them will receive a blood medallion. Only with the blood medallion will they be able to move about on the desolate plain freely. What if someone doesn't have a blood medallion? Jian Chen asked with a frown. They will obviously be captured and forcefully tested, said the middle-aged man. Afterwards, he smiled resplendently and said to Jian Chen, of course, you're a disciple of a peak sect. Disciples of smaller sects like us would never dare to offend you. However, there are a few envoys from other peak sects who handle this matter especially. Look, this is a blood medallion. It's made from a special material. Every single blood medallion has an imprint of our life, so it cannot be forged. The middle-aged man was extremely polite to Jian Chen. He told him everything he knew and even took the initiative to show his own blood medallion to Jian Chen. Jian Chen studied the blood medallion in the middle-aged man's hands and asked no more. He thanked him before leaving. Protector Zhou, he's only a weak disciple. Why were you so polite to him? The plump man asked in confusion after Jian Chen had left. The middle-aged man referred to as Protector Zhou smacked the plump man's forehead with his knuckles again as he said in frustration, "You idiot. He's no ordinary disciple. His attire is something that only an internal disciple can wear. Only starred geniuses possess something like that in the Radiant Saint Hall. Every single disciple like that has extremely great status. They're not people that we can offend. Do you understand?" However, Jian Chen's face immediately sank after he left. He perfectly understood that this so-called blood medallion was something the peak experts had come up with just to find him. It had to be mentioned that the blood medallion had caused Jian Chen quite the headache. Even though he could hide the energy within his blood from people like God Kings, he was unable to hide the actual level of his blood no matter what. This was because even when the blood of God Kings possessed no energy at all, it still differed drastically from the blood of cultivators at lower levels. Let alone through a certain type of treasure, a few experts with great cultivations could even see through it with a single glance. It could be said that once he had his blood tested, his disguise as a Radiant Saint Master would immediately fall apart. I need to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible. I can only get what I want from there. It won't matter even if my disguise falls apart by then, thought Jian Chen. Time was getting tighter and tighter. He really did not have much of it left. Afterwards, Jian Chen sped up. He used the teleportation formation in the nearby city and finally returned to the Radiant Saint Hall after several teleportations. During this time, he frequently saw many people check the blood medallions of every single person in each city. However, his identity as a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall had saved him quite a lot of trouble. None of the people checking for blood medallions dared to stop him. The current Radiant Saint Hall had changed slightly compared to when Jian Chen had left. What stood out the most was that quite a large square had been erected near the Foreign Affairs Hall, where the words, "Blood Test," were written nearby. Many Radiant Saint Masters gathered on the square, having their blood tested in an orderly manner. There were many Radiant Saint Masters among them who held a thumb-sized blood medallion. They studied it curiously. However, compared to outside, the blood test in the Radiant Saint Hall was clearly much more casual. It was not as strict. Jian Chen looked at the square deeply before leaving with a sunken face. He returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak. Chapter 2283, replaced. When Jian Chen returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak, the entire place was quiet. With his sharp senses, he discovered that both Shuofeng and Han Xian were not on the Soaring Clouds Peak. He glanced into the distance and discovered that many radiant saint masters of various cultivation levels were flying directly towards the sky-gazing peak from the other peaks. Jian Chen immediately stopped a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core and asked what was happening. The radiant saint master Jian Chen stopped was a young woman. She immediately looked at Jian Chen with an extremely strange gaze after hearing Jian Chen's question. Oh. You don't know. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak are fighting on the sky-gazing peak. I heard they're fighting for a position as one of the 9 retainers or something. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He clasped his fist at the young lady and no longer remained there for any longer. A pair of radiant wings appeared on his back as he hurried off to the sky-gazing peak as quickly as he could. Jian Chen unleashed his full speed along the way. He constantly overtook radiant saint masters with 3-colored soul cores, causing many of them to look over. Who is he? He only seems to have a 1-colored soul core, but how is he able to move so astonishingly fast? He can actually use the radiant wings to such a level. Does he really have a 1-colored soul core? The person who just passed us seems to be Chang Yang of the Soaring Clouds Peak. What? He's Chang Yang. That person who's rumored to have perfected the usage of radiant saint force. Cries rang out from the surroundings constantly, but Jian Chen ignored them all. He only traveled as quickly as he could, flying over mountain after mountain before finally arriving on the sky-gazing peak. The huge square on the sky-gazing peak had already become crowded. Many radiant saint masters of varying strength gathered there while a huge ring hovered in the air in the center of the square. Jian Chen saw Han Xian and a skinny, middle-aged man battling in the ring with a single glance. The floating ring was a supreme quality saint artifact. Its surroundings were protected by a powerful barrier, enough to easily endure a battle between late god kings. At this moment, Han Xian and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's battle had already reached a great intensity. The laws of the hallowed filled their surroundings, clashing time and time again. It erupted with powerful ripples of energy. All of the energy ripples were stopped by the energy barrier around the ring such that their battle was unable to harm the surrounding radiant saint masters. They fought extremely quickly. Weaker radiant saint masters only saw a flurry, unable to see the two of them strike out at all. Jian Chen frowned when he saw the fight. With his level of cultivation, he could naturally see the entire battle. He could tell with a single glance that Han Xian was quite a lot weaker compared to the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. He had clearly lost the upper hand. His defeat was only a matter of time now. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak should be at the peak of early Radiant God King, Jian Chen thought. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak was only a step away from a cultivation realm equivalent to mid-God King, while Han Xian had only reached God King recently. As he had expected, Han Xian was struck in the chest by the laws of the hallowed. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak condensed. Han Xian was blown away, striking the barrier around the ring heavily. He struggled to climb to his feet. Victory goes to the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan. The Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak's voice rang out, announcing the results of the battle. Afterwards, the barrier opened up, and the white-clothed, skinny Lord of the Snowfall Peak left the ring with a flushed face under the enthusiastic cheers of all the disciples there. Han Xian, on the other hand, laid in the ring, bloodied. He was very injured. Sir! Sir! Zhuofeng and Baiyu, who had been waiting below the ring, immediately flew up and looked at the injured Han Xian. Sorrow filled their faces. Jian Chen also arrived in the ring as quickly as he could. He remained silent as he directly used his radiant arts to heal Han Xian. Both Baiyu and Zhuofeng were slightly surprised by Jian Chen's sudden appearance. Even Han Xian's gloomy gaze lit up slightly. But at this moment, they were clearly in no mood to catch up. Han Xian, why don't you take a good look at yourself first before you try to contend for the spot with me? Humph, you think too highly of yourself. At this moment, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak suddenly looked back and scoffed. Han Xin, you should feel fortunate that we're in the Radiant Saint Hall. Although I can't kill you even when we're outside, I'll definitely leave you half dead, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak said arrogantly. He did not seem to take Han Xin seriously at all. Afterwards, he looked at Jian Chen, and his gaze became especially cold. Although this was the first time he had seen Jian Chen, how was it possible for him to not know the person behind his second disciple's injuries? However, Jian Chen only had a one-colored soul core. He was no different from an ant in his eyes, so with his status, he would never lower himself to talk to Jian Chen. Just when the Lord of the Snowfall Peak was about to look away, Jian Chen just happened to gaze over. They made eye contact. However, the eye contact made the Peak Lord's heart suddenly lurch as he felt an ill omen. But afterwards, the Peak Lord laughed at himself. He thought, what's up with me? Have I been frightened by a low-level disciple with only a one-colored soul core? The Peak Lord did not pay too much attention to it. He left under the gazes of admiration from the many disciples. Han Xin had already been escorted back to the Soaring Clouds Peak by Jian Chen, Bai Yu, and Zhuofeng. At this moment, Han Xin sat in his small wooden hut at the top of the Soaring Clouds Peak as he healed with Radiant Saint Force. Junior sister, what is wrong? Why was teacher fighting with the Lord of the Snowfallen Peak? Jian Chen asked Bai Yu softly from outside the wooden hut. Bai Yu looked at the wooden hut and said with a heavy heart, it's all because of the position as one of the 9 retainers for a chosen saint candidate. Among the 5 candidates, Donglin Yanxue was still missing a retainer, so teacher and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's fight was to decide who would take up the role as the final retainer for Donglin Yanxue. Jian Chen frowned when he heard that. He suddenly felt an ill omen. Strange. Isn't the chosen saint the only who can choose retainers? I heard that due to some things that happened in the last 2 competitions, all 5 candidates this time seem to have the right to choose 9 retainers. It has something to do with the first trial, said Bai Yu. In other words, Donglin Yanxue's 9 candidates have already been confirmed? Jian Chen asked. That's right. I heard from my master that aside from the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, the other 8 retainers for Donglin Yanxue all have mid-7-colored soul cores, said Bai Yu. The master she spoke about was clearly the elder who had taken her away from the Soaring Clouds Peak. Jian Chen's face did not change at all from that, but his heart had already sunken. Raging fury built up within him. Chapter 2284, All for Nothing. In the past, he had given Donglin Yanxue a pure soul, which allowed her cultivation to increase drastically within 2 years. As a result, she became the chosen saint. The entire purpose behind his actions was to gain a position as one of the 9 retainers so that he could access the Tower of Radiance. However, in the end, as the day of the competition approached, he learned from Bai Yu that Donglin Yanxue's 9 retainers had already been decided. Donglin Yanxue had broken her side of the promise, leaving Jian Chen utterly furious. He could not keep up his disguise on the desolate plain for long. He would be exposed once the blood tests came for him. Although the blood tests were not as strict in the Radiant Saint Hall compared to the outside world, he knew that all the disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall would eventually be forced to take the blood tests. As a result, he was truly running out of time. If he could not enter the Tower of Radiance as one of Donglin Yanxue's 9 retainers, he might lose the chance to enter the Tower of Radiance forever. Donglin Yanxue has been making extremely rapid progress among the 5 candidates. I heard teachers say that Donglin Yanxue went from an early 4-colored soul core to the peak of the 4-colored soul core in 2 or 3 years. She's only a step away from the 5-colored soul core. Although the 4 other candidates have been making great progress as well, none of them have reached the peak of the 4-colored soul core. As a result, Donglin Yanxue has gone from being the weakest to the strongest out of the 5 candidates. Moreover, I heard from Master that her grasp and control over Radiant Saint Force has skyrocketed over the past 2 years. She has become even more skilled. There's at least a 70% chance that she'll become the chosen saint. Bai Yu looked at Jian Chen and said with hidden meaning. She knew about Donglin Yanxue spending half a month in Jian Chen's dwelling. Jian Chen listened to Bai Yu talk about Donglin Yanxue's transformation over the past 2 years. Finally, he could not hold himself back anymore. He reminded Bai Yu to look after Han Xian before immediately leaving the soaring cloud's peak. He condensed a pair of radiant wings and shot towards the myriad flowers peak with lightning speed. There was less than a week until the competition between the candidates began. As a result, Jian Chen was able to hear all the radiant saint masters discuss the matter everywhere thanks to his superior senses. Donglin Yanxue's rapid cultivation advancement was no secret. The news had already spread far and wide, so Jian Chen heard many discussions about her. All sorts of versions to this story appeared. However, a small portion of people believed that Donglin Yanxue's improvement over the past 2 years was directly related to Chang Yang of the Soaring Clouds Peak. No way. Chang Yang only has a one-colored soul core, and it's said that he's a 1-star genius. How can he assist a 9-star genius with a 4-colored soul core like Donglin Yanxue? Naturally, more people snorted in response. These discussions either came from small groups of radiant saint masters conversing quietly as they traveled through the air or from the nearby mountains. Jian Chen missed none of it with his superior senses. Jian Chen remained silently along the way. With his speed at the one-colored soul core, he finally arrived on the myriad flowers peak a few hours later. Right after Jian Chen set foot on the mountain, he spread out his senses and enveloped the entire place. The Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak was also an expert equivalent to a mid-god king. Hence, Jian Chen did not dare to use the senses of his soul, just in case the Peak Lord could sense it. However, it was impossible for her to discover his normal senses. However, Jian Chen's face sank very soon. Donglin Yanxue was not on the Myriad Flowers Peak. Isn't that Chang Yang of the Soaring Clouds Peak? It really is him. I heard that Senior Donglin Yanxue journeyed quite the distance to go to the Soaring Clouds Peak to look for him. She even stayed in his dwelling for half a month, so he's Chang Yang. His appearance isn't impressive at all. His cultivation is nothing special, and it's said that he has no background. I really don't know why this person caught Senior Yanxue's eyes. Shoo, don't blabber. How can he catch Senior Yanxue's eyes? It's said that Senior Yanxue only went to find him last time to exchange their experiences on cultivation. The majority of the disciples on the Myriad Flowers Peak were female. Presently, there were a few male disciples from other peaks among them. Immediately, many of the women discovered Jian Chen's arrival. They all cast curious gazes over as they discussed softly in the distance. Jian Chen did not stick around. He turned around and left the Myriad Flowers Peak, returning to the Soaring Clouds Peak. Since Donglin Yanxue was not on the Myriad Flowers Peak, she would definitely be in the Sacred Hall. However, Jian Chen could set foot in there with his current status. Several hours later, Jian Chen returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak. He did not go to the mountain peak. Instead, he sat on a black rock outside his dwelling quietly. He stared at the misty mountains in a daze. Do I really have to expose the fact that I've comprehended the laws of the hallowed already? At this moment, Jian Chen felt conflicted. With Donglin Yanxue going back on her word, he was now stuck between a rock and a hard place. He had no idea how to proceed. Was he supposed to give up on the chance to enter the Tower of Radiance and travel away from this place, away from the desolate plain? Alternatively, did he have to expose the secret of him comprehending the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core, becoming the only genius with such an achievement in the past 1,000,000 years? He would immediately become the chosen saint if he chose the latter. He was reluctant to leave. However, if he revealed his talent, he would immediately become the center of attention. This would increase the chance of him getting exposed. After all, once he became the chosen saint, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall would definitely thoroughly investigate his past or even directly peer into his past and future. Just as Jian Chen faced this dilemma, a figure surrounded by light arrived on the soaring cloud's peak. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed when this person arrived. He was surprised. Even though the person was shrouded by light that obscured her appearance, Jian Chen could tell from a single glance that she was Donglin Yanxue. "We'll talk in your dwelling," Donglin Yanxue said to Jian Chen secretly before directly flying into his dwelling. A gleam of light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. He returned to his simple dwelling silently and immediately cast a formation at the entrance. When Donglin Yanxue saw Jian Chen cast such an unimpressive formation, she frowned slightly. With a wave of her hand, she tossed out a formation disc and set up an even more powerful formation. Afterwards, she dispersed the light and revealed her face. "I get noticed wherever I go now, so I had no choice but to do this," Donglin Yanxue said to Jian Chen helplessly. Jian Chen remained indifferent. He stared at Donglin Yanshue's pretty face closely and said coldly, "You didn't keep your word." Donglin Yanxue became apologetic and replied, "I know, but this matter has already left my control. I no longer have the power to choose the 9 retainers. I'm extremely sorry about this." Donglin Yanxue was ashamed. Chapter 2285, The Lord of the Snowfall Peak's Death. "I have to enter the Tower of Radiance no matter what," Jian Chen secretly made up his mind. The Snowfall Peak was not far from the soaring cloud's peak. They were only separated by 3 mountains. On this day, 3 middle-aged men dressed in radiant Saint Master attire arrived beyond the Snowfall Peak. They smiled as they hovered there. One of them said, "Zhou Yuan, your old friends have come to visit. Are you busy?" The 3 middle-aged men were all lords of peaks in the Radiant Saint Hall. They all had 7 colored soul cores. In the past, they did not need to announce their arrival when they came to visit the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. They would directly set foot on the mountain. But now, Zhou Yuan had become one of Donglin Yanshue's 9 retainers. It was extremely likely for him to enter the Tower of Radiance. His status differed greatly from before, so the 3 of them were unable to visit him as liberally as they used to. The 3 peak lords waited there. However, before Zhou Yuan could answer them, the first disciple of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Mu, had come to receive them. Zhou Mu was a man who looked to be in his 30s. He had a calm and cool personality and possessed quite a bit of talent. He had only been cultivating for around 2,000 years, yet he already possessed a 4-colored soul core. He had comprehended the laws of the hallowed when he had a 3-colored soul core. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak took the most pride in this disciple. Zhou Mu greets the 3 peak lords. "The 3 peak lords have come at a bad time. My teacher is not on the Snowfall Peak right now." Zhou Mu clasped his fist politely. "What? Zhou Yuan is not on the Snowfall Peak? Where did he go then?" The 3 peak lords were surprised. Zhou Mu hesitated before replying, "In a few days, the competition between the chosen saints will begin. Teacher is preparing for that right now, so he has already left the Radiant Saint Hall to buy some saint artifacts that will increase his strength. If that's the case, we won't trouble you anymore. Let's go." The 3 peak lords became disappointed. They did not set foot on the Snowfall Peak, turning around and leaving instead. A figure silently emerged from the dense mist after the 3 of them left. He seemed to be in his 20s, and his appearance was nothing special. He did not stand out at all. He was Jian Chen, who had disguised himself as Chang Yang. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak has actually left the Radiant Saint Hall. Jian Chen stared at the Snowfall Peak from afar. He did not use the senses of his soul, only his regular, superior senses to listen in on the entire conversation between Zhou Mu and the 3 peak lords. Perfect, a gleam of vicious light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. He hid in the clouds again and vanished as if he was never there in the first place. It was enough for him to stand out, make a name for himself, and become renowned during the competition between the candidates that everyone paid attention to. To him, this was a great honor. Moreover, this honor would only be the start to his wonderful future. The Peak Lord left the city very soon. He flew in the sky using Radiant Saint Force. There were no teleportation formations he could use for the remainder of the journey, so he could only fly slowly. However, when the Peak Lord flew over a barren mountain range, a black figure suddenly shot up and directly blocked his path. "Sir, who are you? Why do you block my path?" The Peak Lord came to a halt as he frowned impatiently. He was in a hurry to return to the Radiant Saint Hall right now to make his final preparations for the competition between the candidates. He was unwilling to waste any time when every second mattered. "Zhou Yuan, you've forgotten about me so soon." The person who blocked Zhou Yuan was Jian Chen, who had disguised himself as a burly man. He stared at Zhou Yuan and sneered. At the same time, his gaze became piercing. The Peak Lord was filled with doubt because he was certain that he did not know this black-robed man. However, when he felt the man's piercing gaze, his heart actually lurched. His heart began to beat faster as he became rather afraid of making eye contact with this person. That gaze seems to be rather familiar, thought the Peak Lord. Very soon, he shuddered violently and immediately stared at the man in disbelief. He felt emotional turmoil as he cried out, "Why, you're..." At that moment, he finally recalled the owner of this familiar gaze. It was the gaze that Chang Yang revealed when the Peak Lord defeated the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian. Chang Yang clearly only had a one-colored soul core, but he had now completely transformed into a fighter who gave off the presence of a god king surrounded by the laws of strength. Immediately, the Peak Lord was covered in cold sweat, he was dumbfounded. He clearly understood what it meant to be both a fighter and Radiant Saint Master. However, before the Peak Lord had time to think more about it, Jian Chen had already struck out decisively. His hand directly moved towards Zhou Yuan's head. Not only did the palm strike contain the strength of his 13th layer chaotic body, but it was also amplified by the laws of strength. As a result, despite not using the laws of the sword, his attack resembled a strike from the primordial realm. The air rumbled as he struck out, space shook. The Peak Lord's expression changed drastically. He could not dodge or react in time. He could only watch Jian Chen's hand approach him. Bang! Jian Chen's hand landed on the Peak Lord's head without any suspense. Not only did the Peak Lord's head directly explode from the terrifying power of the chaotic body amplified by the laws of strength, but the force of the attack even reduced his body to mincemeat. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, had died from the first strike. Chapter 2286, Vice Leader Xian Zhan, 1. After killing the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Jian Chen did not stick around. He turned around and left. He did not touch any of Zhou Yuan's belongings, as he was afraid of leaving behind clues that could be traced back to him. Afterwards, Jian Chen disguised himself as Radiant Saint Master Chang Yang again in an obscure location. He made his way around the Foreign Affairs Hall and returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak with an extremely low profile. The Radiant Saint Hall learnt of Zhou Yuan's death very soon. Right when Jian Chen returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak, 3 elders and several violet-robed guards left the Radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds in an aggressive manner. They reached the location where the Lord of the Snowfall Peak had died very soon. The faces of the 3 elders sank the moment they saw the crushed corpse. Their faces became extremely ugly. Zhou Yuan had died in a place where he had to pass through to return to the Radiant Saint Hall. This was placed close to the Radiant Saint Hall, yet someone was bold enough to kill a Peak Lord here. This matter was basically a slap of naked provocation to the Radiant Saint Hall in the eyes of the 3 elders. Look around. We have to get to the bottom of this. We can't spare Zhou Yuan's murderer. How dare he kill a lord of a peak? This person isn't taking us seriously at all, immediately ask guest elder Mu Tian to come over. Get him to turn back time here. We need to know everything that happened. The three elders were furious. They did not care about Zhou Yuan's life. They only cared about the dignity of the Radiant Saint Hall. He was a peak lord, yet he had been mercilessly slain along the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall. If they did not look into this matter properly and failed to capture the murderer, it would damage the name of the Radiant Saint Hall. Very soon, a grey-robed old man was brought over under the lead of several violet-robed guards. He was Mu Tian. He was not a Radiant Saint Master but a fighter. He was an infinite prime that held a guest position in the Radiant Saint Hall, enjoying a status similar to the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall. Mu Tian immediately used a secret technique to turn back time to reveal the events that had occurred. Very soon, the Peak Lord's death at Jian Chen's hands was displayed clearly. However, the eyes of the elders and Mu Tian narrowed slightly when they saw the Peak Lord perish from a single palm strike. This person is very powerful. He probably has a foot planted in the primordial realm. It's quite tough for me to turn back time, Mu Tian said emotionlessly. Looks like the black-robed man had grievances with Zhou Yuan. The Peak Lord's death is related to revenge. It doesn't matter why Zhou Yuan died. He's still a Peak Lord from our Radiant Saint Hall. We must get to the bottom of his death, record his appearance and immediately set up a bounty for him. The three elders ordered the setting of a bounty without any hesitation. Very soon, the bounty was set up, and the search for Zhou Yuan's murderer began throughout the entire desolate plain. At the same time, their investigation into the black-robed man began. The Radiant Saint Hall was a peak organization of the desolate plain after all. The more powerful an organization was, the more they cared about their image. The death of a peak lord along the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall had basically crossed their bottom line. The Radiant Saint Hall would never drop the matter. Meanwhile, the white-robed Donglin Yanxue was sitting on a bed within the Radiant Saint Hall as she rested with her eyes closed. There were only 3 days until the competition between the candidates. She needed to adjust herself to her peak condition so that she could contend for the position she had longed for with all her might. At this moment, the door was opened, and a graceful woman walked in. Despite looking middle-aged, she was still charming. Her skin was white and filled with a mature sense of beauty. Greetings to Master. Donglin Yanxue immediately got off her bed and bowed politely when she saw the middle-aged woman. The middle-aged woman was Donglin Yanxue's master in the Radiant Saint Hall. She was also one of the elders. Her name was Mu Shui. Mu Shui nodded. She looked at Donglin Yanxue gently and said, "Yanxue, I've come to tell you something. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, one of your 9 retainers, has died outside. You now have a missing retainer spot, and someone new will be chosen soon. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak is dead." A strange light flickered through Donglin Yanxue's beautiful eyes immediately. That's right. He's dead, and he died on his way back to the Radiant Saint Hall. The person who killed him sure is bold, daring to take action right outside the Radiant Saint Hall, said Mu Shui. Master, do you know who the murderer is? The Peak Lord is one of my retainers after all. I can't distance myself from his murder at a time like this, Donglin Yanxue said. We have the appearance of the murderer. It's in this crystal. However, you're far too weak right now, so you can't avenge Zhou Yuan. That's because the murderer is very powerful. I think only the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall can deal with him. Adjust your condition properly in the next 2 days. I'll choose your new retainer for you. Mu Shui left behind a crystal and was about to leave. Master, can I choose this retainer instead? Donglin Yanxue immediately asked. Mu Shui stopped. She looked back at Donglin Yanxue and sighed gently. Are you thinking about giving the position to that disciple from the Soaring Clouds Peak? It's a pity that he's too weak. Master, I owe Chang Yang a huge favor. Just help me out this time and let me return the favor. Otherwise, I'll always be in guilt. It'll affect my future cultivation, Donglin Yanxue pleaded painstakingly. Mu Shui sighed gently. She said with some helplessness, all right then, I'll listen to you. I'll do my best to persuade the other elders. In the end, it's not my decision to make. Jian Chen sat in his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak. The light in his eyes flickered as he sank into his thoughts. Although the Peak Lord's death has opened up a spot among the 9 retainers, Donglin Yanxue has said that she isn't completely confident about this matter. As a result, I can't place all my hopes on Donglin Yanxue. Looks like it's time for me to find Xian Ming, thought Jian Chen. After making up his mind, he sent a sliver of the senses of his soul into the Inata Tower immediately. Chapter 2287, Vice Leader Xian Zhan, 2, Xian Ming was sitting on the floor of the 2nd floor in the Inata Tower. Currently, he was devoting himself to cultivation. Dense, sacred radiant saint force enveloped him as the laws of the hallowed revolved about his surroundings. He was trying his best to condense a soul tree. This was because an extremely powerful demon threatened the lives of hallowed saint masters who reached peak radiant God King. As a result, Xian Ming did not dare to leave this place unless he broke through. He did not dare to go outside and would prefer permanent restriction. As a result, only by breaking through and condensing a soul tree, reaching something akin to the primordial realm for fighters, would he recover his freedom. Xian Ming. At this moment, Jian Chen condensed an illusionary figure using the sliver of his soul and appeared before Xian Ming silently. At this moment, he was forced to disturb Xian Ming's cultivation. He roused Xian Ming with a gentle call. Brother Jian Chen. Long time no see. Oh right, how's the situation outside right now? Have you avoided the heavenly king of azure brilliance's pursuit? Have you made it onto the desolate plain? Xian Ming stopped cultivating and asked several questions immediately. In particular, his eyes lit up with undisguised eagerness when he mentioned the desolate plain. I'm already on the desolate plain, said Jian Chen. Xian Ming's face immediately lit up when he heard that. He said in excitement, really? You're already on the desolate plain? Fantastic, this is just fantastic. Oh right. Brother Jian Chen, where are you on the desolate plain right now? See, can you? Xian Ming paused and began to hesitate. Jian Chen smiled and said, Xian Ming, if there's anything you want to say, just say it. After hesitating for a while, Xian Ming gritted his teeth and clasped his fist at Jian Chen before saying, Brother Jian Chen, can you pay a visit to the Radiant Saint Hall and tell my father I'm still alive and safe right now? After all, it has already been far too long since I left the desolate plain. I've cut off all contact with my father to avoid being discovered by the great demon for all these years. My father has no idea that I'm well right now. Naturally. However, your father is one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall. He stands supreme. It's not that easy for me to see him, Jian Chen agreed without any hesitation. Xian Ming's request happened to align with his needs. That's easy. Xian Ming bit his finger to draw blood and placed a droplet of it in a jade bottle before passing it to Jian Chen. He said, Hallowed Saint Masters at my father's level are extremely sensitive to their bloodline. Jian Chen, take this jade bottle and open it near the Radiant Saint Hall. As long as my father is in the Radiant Saint Hall, he'll sense it. Jian Chen stowed the bottle away. After some thought, he said, just this isn't enough. If your father misunderstands me and thinks that I obtained this droplet of blood through other means, I'll be in trouble. Then let me write a letter and tell my father that you, Jian Chen, are my best friend. Xian Ming immediately took out a jade slip from his space ring and began to engrave a message in there with the senses of his soul. Hold on. I'm using a different name on the desolate plain right now. Don't use the name Jian Chen. Use Chang Yang instead. Also, don't mention any details about me to your father. You can't disclose the existence of this tower either. You must have sensed it. This tower can hide you from the heavenly secrets, so it is an item of great quality. If your father learns about it, who knows if he'll start targeting me, Jian Chen warned sternly. He could not afford to be careless when handling this. Xian Ming thought Jian Chen was still being hunted down by the Azure Ping King, so he guaranteed, Brother Jian Chen, you do not need to worry at all. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance will not dare to take a single step onto the desolate plain. However, Xian Ming still followed Jian Chen's request. After he finished writing, he passed the jade slip to Jian Chen for him to check the contents. After all, he was hiding with Jian Chen's assistance. He had to listen to Jian Chen for everything. If he angered Jian Chen, he might decide to not go to the Radiant Saint Hall to meet his father. Jian Chen carefully checked the contents of the jade slip. After confirming several times that there was nothing wrong, he left the second floor with the jade bottle and the jade slip. He arrived on the 9th floor. Jian Chen moved the droplet of blood to a jade bottle of higher quality on the 9th floor. No matter how long this blood stays in this bottle, it will be like it was just drawn. As a result, Xian Ming's father won't be able to tell when this blood was drawn and stored in the bottle, thought Jian Chen. After arranging everything and ensuring that there were no problems, the sliver of his soul finally left the Inata Tower. Jian Chen sat in his dwelling as he looked at the jade bottle. He hesitated slightly before opening the bottle cap. At the same time, two middle-aged men sat before each other within a well-decorated room of the Radiant Saint Hall. Xian Zhan, who do you think will become chosen saint this time? One of the middle-aged men enjoyed the good alcohol leisurely as he asked in a casual tone. He was rather skinny, but his resolute face possessed a dignified presence of supremacy, much like a king. He just seemed to be naturally awe-inspiring. He was one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, Mohe. The middle-aged man referred to as Xian Zhan seemed especially burly. Just his body alone seemed to possess terrifying amounts of power. His chiseled face seemed cold, and it was enough to cause people to shiver. His gaze was piercing as well. It was difficult to maintain eye contact with him. There was always worry, sometimes more, sometimes less, on his face. It was like something weighed on his heart permanently. Xian Zhan was also one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall. He held great authority in the Radiant Saint Hall, making him an existence second to only the leader himself. I have no interest in that. It will be up to their luck as for who emerges victorious, Xian Zhan said indifferently. Worry always lingered on his face. He looked at Xian Zhan and sighed gently, you're worrying about your treasured son again? Xian Zhan said nothing. He looked at the sky outside blankly with his piercing eyes. He sighed inside when he saw this. He had no idea how to comfort Xian Zhan. After all, Xian Ming was Xian Zhan's only child. Xian Zhan had always treasured and spoilt Xian Ming, raising him with everything that he had. If Xian Ming had really died, he had no idea how great of an impact it would have on Xian Zhan. However, at this moment, Xian Zhan suddenly shuddered. His eyes immediately shone brightly as he leapt out of his seat. He became fixated on a certain direction as he could not help but show excitement. In the next moment, he took a step and vanished. As if he had teleported, he left the sacred hall and appeared in the mountains below. What is Xian Zhan doing? He was surprised by Xian Zhan's actions. However, he did not follow along. Instead, he sat there to enjoy his rare liquor as he secretly paid attention to everything in the Radiant Saint Hall. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.